Monsters poured out of the labyrinth for decades. Humans won, and the losers freed their prisoners. Some prisoners were babies born underground. Monsters had raised them on their own milk. Soldiers carry out a boy with glowing white eyes. That boy is Jin, our main guy, grown up now. A film crew points a camera at him. Jin is the one dungeon baby who avoids labyrinths. His client brought armed guards just in case. Jin wants them past the second floor first. He also tells them to keep the rifles quiet. They laugh at the man they call a baby. The cameraman spots movement in the rock. An injured underbeast is breathing right there. The guard leader decides to put on a show. Jin screams at them not to shoot. Rifles open up anyway. The beast rears up and they keep firing. It drops and they stand over the body. The crew poses beside it and calls it easy. Jin hears a predator coming for the gunshots. The guards price the next kill in millions. Jin covers his face because money was the plan. He drags the cameraman away from them. Jin tells his client the trip is over. She decides the dungeon baby is a coward. Jin says the shots pulled in every predator. The client asks if he let those guards die. The lens finds a body face down in blood, teeth fill the frame, and someone screams. A wolf monkey clamps down on a man's head. Jin asks why they are on the first floor. A whole pack of them steps into view. One of them corners Jin, who carries a dull knife. A fist the size of his chest comes down. Jin's eyes flare white. His blade finds the weak spot and opens it. He jumps and drives the knife down from above. Another monkey rears over his client. Jin cuts it apart before it touches her. He hauls her up and warns her about his speed. Then he leaps clear with her on his shoulder. They lose the monkeys in a side passage. Jin says he was hired as a guide, not a guard. He saved her because a corpse cannot pay. Behind them sits a live labyrinth emblem. The stone under their feet starts to split. Jin's face goes wide as the floor drops. He lands at the bottom with a broken left arm. Jin has fallen into the center of the labyrinth. A snake bigger than the hall opens its eyes. It takes him in one bite before he moves. Jin swears he cannot die here, and he is about to find out. Jin wakes up flat on his back in the dark, and his own gasp startles him. He sits up on cold stone, and the venom that dropped him is gone. Jin checks his hands because he watched that poison crawl up his arm. He makes a fist with the arm that snapped, and it closes clean. Every wound on him has sealed, and he cannot find a single scar. Jin stands and figures he is back near the first floor entrance. A body lies face down on the stone a few steps ahead of him. He rolls her over. Yoonju, the last survivor of his team, is out cold. She still breathes, but her injuries look bad enough to kill her. Jin lifts her onto his back since no first aid kit is anywhere close. Blood comes up when she coughs, and her eyes stay shut. He tells her to hold on, because stalling now means she dies. Jin carries her toward the exit and promises they are almost there. Hours later, Jin walks up to his own front gate and says he is back. The TV in the living room is already running the dungeon accident. The report says 7 of the 9 died in an underbeast ambush. The anchor names the survivor and credits the dungeon baby who carried her. Jin kills the TV, glad the guards ignoring him got caught on video. Without that camcorder footage, he would be paying a fine right now. Jin holds up a second envelope and plans to hand it over quick. Hyunji, his little sister, catches him in the hallway and stops mid-word. She holds the crumpled first envelope, and her eyes are red and swollen. Jin asks why she looks like that and whether she has been crying. He decides the money did it, since the amount is huge for her. Jin pushes the second envelope at her for the wedding and says not to ask where it came from. A hand settles on Hyunji's shoulder and she freezes. His dad steps into the light and asks what the meaning of this is. Jin plays it casual and asks whether today was his dad's day off. Word reached him that his son went out risking his life for cash. He walked off work and came straight home over it. His dad orders Hyunji to give the money back and asks why she still holds it. Jin tries to cut in and manages exactly one word. His dad asks if the parents are useless enough that Jin must bleed for a wedding. Jin claims the convenience store paid it, and his dad shouts him quiet. They share no blood, and his dad says Jin underestimates him badly. Jin lowers his head and apologizes without arguing further. The envelope comes back toward Jin with an order to take it. Hyunji stands in the doorway with the money and says nothing. Jin says her name once and his dad blocks the space between them. His dad says he raised him well, yet Jin turned out selfish. Jin argues that he gave it freely and wants it spent on the wedding. His dad answers that she would refuse it if she knew the risk behind it. Family goes both ways, so his dad asks him to stop upsetting them. He sends Jin to rest and warns him never to pull this again. Adopting a dungeon baby pays the new parents a serious amount of money. Jin looks at the envelope nobody in this house wants to touch. Plenty of those adoptions ended in abuse, and then in dead parents. Jin stops at Hyunji's door and counts himself lucky for a real family. Back in his own room, the marriage problem still has no fix. Jin raises his hand and looks at the tattoo he never got explained. Green light leaks out from under his palm while he watches. A glowing window pops open in front of his face and just hovers. It calls the place Naga's Labyrinth and says its owner is not qualified. Jin drops into his desk chair with that window floating beside him. He digs through the internet with a stream running since the thing looks like a game. Jin wonders whether an abandoned labyrinth picked him as its master. The portal line bothers him, because portals belong in games too. A new mark shows up on the portal row that was not there before. He presses the small red circle, and that turns out to be a mistake. The whole room cracks apart around him and the floor gives way. Jin shouts one confused word while the cracks spread over everything. He lands hard on stone tiles in a wide, dark hall. A sword hangs inside a stone ring ahead with a snake coiled around it. Jin says the hall looks a little different, so it must be a new place. His head snaps around and his whole face goes tight. The Snake King, the same thing that bit him, lights up its eyes. Jin crouches low and admits he can barely track how fast it moves. The thing closes on him before he can finish that thought. Jin throws his coat over its head and shoves off the ground. The Snake King stands there wrapped in the coat with its blade on its back. It calls him stupid and asks if the same trick was supposed to work twice. Jin knows the coat buys seconds because it rips through cloth easily. His eyes flare blue, and a voice names him the releaser of 18,000 snakes. The Snake King calls the crown far too heavy for him, then calls all of it fate. Jin asks what throne it means and whether it owns this labyrinth. It wishes him luck, and Jin yells for it to hold up a second. Jin tells it to quit playing with him and shouts that he hates labyrinths. He went inside exactly once, and only for his sister's wedding fee. The hall goes quiet and leaves him alone in the dark. Jin walks off, telling himself his parents were right all along. Hyunji's voice reaches him inside the labyrinth, calling for her brother. A crack tears open in the air and shows his own bedroom through it. Jin figures this is the portal he fell through, and that sound crosses it. The door handle turns while Hyunji announces she is coming in. Jin gives up on thinking and decides to just go for it. He dives back through the crack and lands in his room. Jin swears his body was breaking, yet he finds nothing wrong with it. Hyunji opens the door and starts asking about the strange noise. She points at the sweat and the clothes he never changed. Behind him, the stream on the laptop announces a legendary kill. Hyunji lights up and asks if her brother plays games now. Jin says it is only a stream and she calls him uptight anyway. She reminds him he spaced out in his room for hours as a kid and he cannot argue. Jin asks what she actually came for and Hyunji goes quiet. Her eyes drop and she looks close to crying again. Hyunji tells her brother she is sorry and she means it. She never knew he went back inside that place for her sake. Jin waves it off and tells her not to worry about the money. He stops mid-sentence because the cash is not in this house. Jin pushes her out the door and tells her to wait a bit. Through the crack, a little monster hunches over his coat and every bill is inside it. The thing keeps chewing while the portal hangs open in his bedroom. Jin stares through the gap, and his sister's wedding money now belongs to a monster. Jin cracks his door open and tells Hyunji, his sister, that he is fine. He blames the game for erasing yesterday and asks to keep his new hobby. Hyunji says okay, and the door shuts with a quick thanks behind it. She stands in the hallway because she has never seen her brother this excited. Inside the room, Jin leans back and quietly apologizes to her. His thumb flips the lock, since nobody can walk in on what comes next. Jin steps through the portal and drops into the dark labyrinth. He sprints over cracked stone toward the pile of gear he left behind. His face tightens because the thief is long gone. Jin digs through the pile and every single item is there except the cash. A snake scroll blames an imp, and he yells about a monster stealing paper. The scroll wants synchronization finished before the entrance will open. Jin smashes his palm into the broken stone and swears at the whole night. He drops into the stone chair and stares straight ahead. Jin rubs his eyes since one brutal night of work just paid him nothing. His fingers close around the blue marble on the armrest. A map window opens, but the details stay locked until he synchronizes. The prompt gives him one question and two buttons. Jin compares the marble to the tattoo on his arm, then drops the thought. He tilts his head at the green window and says nothing. Jin picks sync anyway, because the money will not walk back on its own. A giant snake emblem hangs over the gate, and he looks tiny under it. His finger taps yes, and one more labyrinth swallows one more dungeon baby. The window starts checking whether he qualifies, and that check changes everything. Jin waits with his cheek in his hand and wonders about the delay. He swipes the window aside since the promised gate never showed up. Jin slumps back and jokes that digging for the imp would be quicker. The system calls him the Naga King, and light explodes out of the throne. Jin grits his teeth while the voice rings inside his skull. Stone cracks apart and white light eats the old chamber whole. The floor tilts under him as the labyrinth rebuilds itself. Red banners and snake statues fill a proper throne hall. Jin admits the place looks better, though it stays dark and creepy. The scroll makes him owner of a rank 1 labyrinth with locked facilities. Jin walks up to a dark archway and calls it the Labyrinth Gate. Down in the shadows, a small shape darts across the floor. Jin's head turns fast because he caught that tiny movement. The imp freezes mid-step, sure that nobody could have noticed it. Jin is already moving before the imp finishes that thought. It whips around with both eyes blown wide open. The imp shrieks as an arm closes on it from the side. Jin's palm clamps over its face and pins the head back. The little thief screams with its jaw stretched wide. Jin pins it to the wall and says he never expected it to come back. He demands his money and promises to kill the imp without it. The imp flails, and Jin works out that the cash is gone. It puts out a shaking hand and asks if he knows what that money was. Its claws rummage through the ragged clothes for a replacement. Jin starts refusing the trade, and then he sees what the imp is holding. A red gem rests against his chest, and his eyes lock onto it. The stone glows in the imp's palm, cut clean and deep red. Down gems only grow in geyser, buried deep or hidden inside a rare plant. Hunters kill huge beasts for them, since digging almost never works. 1 carat sells for millions of won, and this piece is thumb-sized. Jin lifts the imp higher and figures on tens of millions of won. The imp kicks the air and squeals while his grip stays locked. 2 more stones show up in its hands, 1 blue and 1 red. Jin stares at both gems and repeats the count out loud. The imp panics and the stones slip out of its grip. Jin's hand snaps toward the falling gems before they scatter. He grabs the red one and flings the imp into the air behind him. The blue gem bounces down the steps while he swears at it. His fist closes on nothing, and the imp bolts for the gate. Jin shrugs since he came out of this with 2 down gems. Light rises off the platform and he grins at it in the dark. He clenches his fist, and the money he lost just came back worth far more. The labyrinth grabs the gem Jin just earned and calls it a sacrifice for its own upgrade. He shouts into the dark tunnel and demands to know whose command that was. His palm slams onto the stone where the blue gem was sitting. He opens his hand and the gem crumbles into gray dust. Repairs will take a day and only 72 hours remain to raise the rank. Jin reads the window with both hands still frozen in the air. He scans the empty platform and mutters that the rock was worth a car. 4 days later, Hyunji marries and the in-laws' generosity carries the whole wedding. Jin haggles with a buyer over the down gem and settles at 18 million. Back in his room, he calls the price low, but good enough for a gift. The upgrade timer ticks out while he grumbles about the gem the labyrinth stole. The gate opens inside his bedroom while he stands there with his hands in his pockets. Purple rock swallows the furniture around him and pulls him under. Jin lands in the labyrinth and turns toward the green window beside him. The map warns that his gate is weak and his defense force does not exist. He reads the new facility name and asks what a naga nest even is. Thick dust rolls out of the passage and pushes past his shoulder. Jin covers his mouth and coughs into the cloud. The dust thins out and a confused huh slips out of him. A room stands open where the wall used to block the way. The nest is nearly empty and he expected reptiles to keep it wet and sticky. A huge shadow rears up right behind his shoulder. Jin whips around with his teeth clenched and calls it a dungeon beast. 6 rank 1 Naga workers have spawned, and red light floods the passage. The dungeon beast turns out to be 6 chubby lizard people who barely reach his waist. A window tells him the workers are waiting for their owner's command. Jin knows exactly what low-level workers do, because he dug as an excavator himself. He picks 3 of them as scouts and puts the labyrinth at the center of their map. They must chart the risks and resources around it, and run from every fight. The 3 slip into the tunnel with no guards since Jin has none to send. The rest get orders to dig the opposite wall out into a storage room. One worker waddles off with a pickaxe and he expects nothing from a creature built like prey. An hour later, Jin looks at their work and calls it impressive. 3 of them carved a full room out of the rock, and the storage registers. A chime says part of the scout team is back, and his face drops. A single worker walks in through the gate. Jin runs down asking where the other 2 went, since workers never respawn. He is already calling it a permanent loss when a shriek cuts him off. The scout came back only to unload spoils and morale rises for 4 workers. The scout holds a rolled hide out toward him in the corridor. Jin opens it up and asks whether the thing is a map. The labyrinth map redraws itself with markers spread across the grid. He reads the fresh version and sees how much sits close to his gate. A heap of old gear crashes down onto the floor beside him. Jin calls the pile a serious haul for one trip out. The scout beams while he wonders if thanks are the right answer. The loot is war junk from the old geyser fighting, rusted and outdated. Nobody has walked here in years, and then one piece catches the light. Another worker jogs over with its little hands pressed together. The worker pushes the object into his open palm. A down gem sits between his fingers, and he says the name out loud. Jin asks whether the worker saw more stuff like this out there. He grabs the little scout and orders it to bring back every single one. Jin sprints up the stairs to get the gems evaluated. 2 steps from the exit, he stops himself. Leaving now means the labyrinth stands undefended while he is away. 3 workers blink up at him from the floor. Jin lets out a slow, all right, and turns back around. The labyrinth keeps paying him, either in money or in openings. He walks past the red banners toward the altar chamber. Jin feeds 3 down gems into the green flame burning on the altar. White light cracks across the stone face of the altar. He steps back and asks if he traded tens of millions for possibility. Jin admits 5 years of avoiding the labyrinth died after one trip inside because life above ground bored him. The workers look up together and the words name him the Naga King. Jin grins and promises glory big enough to cover the whole of Geyser. He lifts his hand over the altar and calls Naga up out of it. Jin reads the summon list and asks if these 2 units are all he can call. Turns out every unit charges rent, 1/10 of a down gem each month. He has 4 gem energy, so he orders 1 Naga soldier and 1 Naga maid. The altar eats a single energy point and the soldier summon begins. White light bursts across the hall and Jin throws an arm up to block it. He steps toward the stone archway and lets out a low ooh at what waits there. A muscled Naga warrior stands there with a spear, not the sword Jin pictured. Jin orders it to guard the storage beside the workers and it hisses back. The soldier slides down the tunnel, built tough enough for the 5th floor. 2 more energy burns away, and the window names the next maid heroic rank. Jin waits alone on the cracked floor while a thin beam drops from above. The glare turns so harsh that he shouts at the light to stop. An armored torso pushes through it, wrapped in pale layered cloth. Horns curve back over teal hair, and one purple eye finds him. Dominique, his new Naga maid, towers above him on a heavy coiled tail. She shuts her eyes, smiles, and calls him master inside his head. Then she begs him for orders, and Jin works out that she talks too. Jin lays out the whole mess for her, from the altar to the hired workers. Dominique presses a finger to her temple and hums over the problem. She asks if the tutorial is still running, and he admits that it is. Then she wants permission to open the explored labyrinth map. A green screen unfolds in her hands, marking a load and a gem plant nearby. She would rather walk the ground herself, so the two head up the stairs. Her first stop is a stalactite cave with one weak wall worth breaking through. Behind that wall sits the lode, packed with crystals and miniable gems. She shows him a plant that grows down gems and survives with no care at all. She wants to harvest the entire patch right now, and Jin just blinks at her. Next comes a water cave she picks out as the territory of the labyrinth. Jin points at a red mark on the map and asks what the danger there is. The mark means beasts, and the workers retreated instead of clearing them. Dominique raises a finger and calls those beasts a paying hunting ground. Jin double-checks her name across the water, and she confirms it happily. He tells her she is incredible, and she grins with both eyes shut. She hides behind her hands and says any labyrinth maid does this much. Jin never expected a naga who could hand him advice. The catch arrives one line later. He warns her that he plans to spend most of his time above ground. Dominique says she already understands what worries her master. No core means no swarm yet, but she wants more units and an upgrade. Jin hears the price of that plan, and it swallows even more down gems. He asks her to handle it, but only the owner can drain gems and summon. Jin turns back toward her with one last question on his mind. He asks what happens to him if he fails to meet her standards. Nagas can leave or rebel, yet no beast can absorb his labyrinth. Only the chosen can own it, and no naga would strike at royalty. The two of them stand apart on the dark stone. Finished with the question, Jin lowers his eyes, because that answer is the one he wanted. He winks, says all right, and closes the whole subject there. Back at the altar, he ends the small talk, and 3 harvested gems start the upgrade. Above ground, he walks into a shop that buys labyrinth-down gems. The gem dealer turns the red stone over and asks where it came from. Jin says the first floor looks dead, and wolf monkeys are climbing up. The dealer rubs his head over 5 years of falling explorer quality. He leans in and offers Jin a contract to sell only through his shop. Jin cut ties with Geyser years ago, so the counter becomes his news source. He agrees on one condition, and the dealer only wants the stones anyway. The old man grins and throws a big job on top of the deal. Jin frowns at him, and the dealer points a finger before naming it. Black claws fill the frame while he asks about hell spiders. Each one carries a down gem, and a single kill would make Jin rich. They nest under the Paju gate, and Jin turns the whole job down flat. The dealer scowls at him for skipping the biggest offer of the day. Then he brings up the family Jin supports, and Jin stops walking. Jin slams a hand onto the desk, and the old man throws himself back. The dealer's eyes go wide, and sweat runs down his face. Jin leans out of the dark and asks whether that was a background check on him. Jin stands over a smashed table while the dealer, the old man who buys his loot, begs him to calm down. The dealer says other dungeon babies are far less gentle, and dirty goods put him at risk. He calls the quality of Jin's gear suspicious, and Jin says flatly he earned every piece himself. The old man points around the office, where almost everyone lost family to blades. He says a man with nothing to protect cannot be trusted, since he can walk away anytime. Then he brings up the family Jin feeds, and Jin cuts him off mid-sentence. Jin leans out of the shadow and promises he will show what a psychotic dungeon baby looks like. The dealer folds, rubs his neck, and swears the background check will never repeat. Jin heads for the door and tells him to wire the down gem money into his account. Alone in the office, the old man keeps staring at the empty doorway. He looks down at his slippers, sees the wrecked table, and grumbles about damn dungeon babies. Years earlier, a kid with pale, glowing eyes freezes while somebody screams at him to run. Labyrinth dwellers sprint through the tunnels as hell spiders swarm, and one begs for help. A body drops into the dirt, and a voice asks why, after a lifetime of digging this place. One of the dying dwellers screams the question again with her teeth bared. Black spiders crawl over the fallen while the name Duke Geyser rips through the dark. Jin snaps awake in the present with his eyes blown wide. Dominique drops to her knees beside him and calls out for her master. She asks if he is okay while he pushes himself upright. Jin tells her he dreamed about the past, and she says the past cannot touch him now. He lowers his hand from his face and lets the whole thing drop. The Naga workers line up behind Dominique in silence, not sure what to do. Then Jin buries his face and starts laughing, which sends Dominique into a panic. He tells her the round little workers just do not look very labyrinth-like. Back on his throne, Jin says he likes the odd ones exactly as they are. He admits these non-labyrinth guys actually make him less nervous down here. Jin brings up the hell spiders far off for now and deeper floor beasts that could climb up. Dominique beams at him and reports 3 seconds left on the upgrade. Jin barely gets a confused word out before the counter empties. Green light floods the corridor, and the third rank finishes with 6 new workers. Jin and Dominique step onto a ledge where a red gem floats in the dark. Dominique points at a teal orb on a stone pedestal and names it the labyrinth core. She explains it spawns as the labyrinth grows, and Jin calls it a weak point nobody asked for. She adds that a broken core kills every feature, while a defended one rebuilds from ruins. Jin stares into the green glow as the system flags 20 horned rats 1 hour out. Dominique shouts about the attack and warns that one Naga soldier cannot hold that many. Jin admits he never even heard of horned rats, then opens the summon list. Sweat runs down his face as the scroll unrolls with more unit types than he expected. The archer entry alone tells him these units cost more energy than he can afford. His counter reads 21 gems against 20 rats, so he plans to spend everything. Dominique leans in and says one Naga soldier handles 4 horned rats by itself. She breaks it down with icons, where a warrior or a priest is worth 2 soldiers, a mage is worth 5, and Chibi Dominique looks extremely proud of that number. Jin grins while she warns that everyone except the warrior falls apart in melee. Her enormous eyes fill the panel when he thanks her for being here. He calls out 1 Naga soldier and 2 Naga warriors while she squeaks beside him. Jin stands alone before the summoning gate as white light tears out of it. He walks forward with Dominique and the little workers trailing behind. 2 armored Naga warriors rise up roaring, and the system confirms all 3. Jin says it beat his expectations and figures wolf monkeys might be doable now. Then he glances to the side and the grin slides off his face. 1 small brown worker sits alone on the tiles with a wooden club at its feet. Jin turns around and asks what is wrong, and Dominique starts explaining. She says Naga workers are mutations, and stronger Nagas produce more of them. The little one's face fills the frame with huge tired yellow eyes. It sits in front of a proper Naga warrior, facing what it could have been. Jin folds his arms while she calls it sluggish and short on willpower. Still, it swings a pickaxe as fast as the rest because raw strength covers the gap. Dominique offers to teach it a lesson, and Jin shuts that idea down instantly. He orders every Naga worker gathered up, even the ones added minutes ago. Jin promises nobody is fighting anything because they are going on a field trip. He throws her own words back, since Nagas value honor and this is their first battle. Jin tells the uneasy little one that no danger will get anywhere near it. He takes its clawed hand and moves straight on to picking weapons. Jin lifts a long curved blade off the rack and asks what a brave warrior should carry. The little one's eyes go sparkly while it asks for a small but grand warrior's weapon. Jin turns away with a crooked grin, already sold on his own plan. The whole Naga line stands ready, with Dominique tiny between the armored warriors. Jin strolls out with a wooden shaft on his shoulder, promising the rats they crawled into a snake's mouth. Deep under the rock, a mob of horned rats sniffs out the cave where the snakes live. Their scouts report that the tunnel ahead holds only digging snakes and no fighters. One of them waves a pickaxe around and calls the new snake owner a complete idiot. Tretch, the biggest horned rat there, soaks it up while his mob swears his horns make him smart. Tretch roars that the snakes go extinct today, since this cave is the last one they have. The whole pack screams about eating the snakes and growing fatter horns off the meal. Tretch swears they never run again, and 2 soldiers admit his big words confuse them. He howls that digging is finished, and the cavern chants his name straight back at him. The rats pour down the tunnel with swords drawn and orders to wipe the snakes out. More of them flood in, cheering the fancy vocabulary of their leader while they charge. 3 baby Nagas freeze in the open and try to shush each other. A rat vaults up with a spear and screams at the pack to kill the little one first. Jin, the new owner of this labyrinth, drops into the wave with a wooden shaft and shields them. The nearest rat gets one confused squeak out before the word nagas reaches it. Jin shouts at his snakes to prove their worth right here. He throws an arm up between 2 armored Naga warriors, and the whole line moves with him. The Nagas swing their blades down with orders to leave none of the rats alive. The front rank finally works out that the empty cave was bait and starts screaming about a trap. One rat takes a blade across the chest before it can even turn around. A voice asks Tretch whether he is satisfied with this, and he answers with a flat stare. Back in the mining tunnel, he stood alone with a pickaxe, small and busy. Tretch growls that rats get eaten if they stop digging, because the owners are big and strong. The hooded stranger behind him calls him the bravest rat, and Tretch spits that brave means reckless. The stranger turns to go teach some other rat instead, and Tretch yells at him to stop. The stranger grins under his hood and says it could maybe work. Tretch's eyes go huge at the thought of a rat owning a whole labyrinth. The chanting drags him back into the present, right in the middle of the slaughter. Blades drop on the rats beside him while they scream that every one of them dies here. Then he spots the green marble floating over the stone, the one he was told about. His pack begs him to swallow it, become strong, and protect them from the snakes. The mob tears itself open and clears a lane straight to the floating marble. Spears cross on both sides while the rats yell at each other to guard their leader. A gold-armored naga cuts down a rat that is still clinging to its arm. 3 more leap over that naga's back and hammer it so their leader keeps running. A pale rat throws itself into the blades, begging the others to save their kind. Further up the path, Dominique stands watch beside a stack of cargo bundles. Her face twists and she screams for her master. Jin steps out of the dark with blood across his cheek and a very calm stare. He asks a gold-armored naga to lend him its spear while it dangles a rat by the neck. Tretch launches himself over the baby nagas with the marble still glowing ahead. Rats swarm up the broken stone stairs toward the altar near the ceiling. He blasts off the stone floor and dust bursts out behind his heels. A red warning window opens beside him and he drops to one knee at what it says. Up at the altar, a rat coughs its way out of the smoke. The green core hangs there glowing, untouched inside all that dust. A gray paw taps along the rim of the stone, feeling for the marble. 2 rats crawl through the smoke, one hauling a spear, muttering about freedom for his brothers. Tretch rears up under the core with that spear raised and says it is right there. A hand pulls the wooden shaft back out, and Dominique says the rat tried to eat the core. Jin stands under the altar while she explains that horned rat teeth could never dent it. The rat that made it lies dead on the stone, and Jin admits he needs more care next time. He lifts the borrowed spear to hand it back, and Dominique tells him not to bother. Below them, the Naga line stands over the dead leader while the rest of the pack loses its nerve. The Nagas keep carving through them, and Jin admits he was nervous over nothing. Dominique says the rats are barely tougher than Naga workers, which stops him cold. Jin thinks of the dungeon babies from the Great War and finds the whole idea gross. A Naga slams a rat flat with one arm while the others scatter behind it. Its tail sweeps the floor and flings rats into the dark, and Jin notes how quick that huge body is. Dominique coughs at him loudly until he finally asks her what she wants. She points down the glowing tunnel and suggests they study what the Nagas can really do. Far from the cave, a purple flame burns beside a spear, and a voice counts 1 heroic troop and 4 normal ones. A hooded servant kneels in the light and reports that the new owner rushed his summons. A huge stone monster leans over him and asks why 20 workers went to check such a weak target. The kneeling figure adds that their mercenary is out on a blood subjugation job. That mercenary mocks the idea of handing a war to a hired blade, and the voice reminds him what he is. A giant stone fist closes while the voice says their mercenary carries stale dragon blood. A monstrous orange eye opens in the dark and promises itself a nice sight. The victory board pops up with the horned rats wiped out and Tretch marked dead. The system hands him the beginner commander title for winning the fight. Dominic, his Naga attendant, cheers the win while Jin just stares at nothing. She asks what is wrong, and he answers that plenty is wrong. He points at the dead horned rat that broke into his own owner's room. Her eyes go wide as he says the rats ignored the core, so she got lucky. Jin decides the defenses cannot wait since the labyrinth could be wiped out. 2 armored Naga warriors listen while he tells them to hold on to this win. He spreads an arm and reminds the whole cave that weaklings die in the geyser. Dominic looks up at his raised hand as he admits the labyrinth is still weak. The little workers crane their necks while he promises them a real fortress. Jin throws both arms up, and the whole cavern screams back at him. He grins and tells the crowd that they will be remembered as legends. Days later, the little Nagas are chewing through the rat corpses in storage. 3 workers head into the mining tunnel while one claims to be the leader. The rest march off with pickaxes to harvest gems from the lodes and plants. Jin crosses his arms and thinks about patrols and proper hunting grounds. He has no down gems left for summoning, and a voice asks about rat horns. Old hands sort the horns on a desk, and Jin says he found the nest by luck. His broker holds a black horn up and calls everything from the ground saleable. Jin asks about down gems, and the broker admits none came in recently. The broker slumps back and calls the trade finished for today. Money goes to the account as usual, and Jin does not move for the door. Jin brings up the hell spiders the broker mentioned during their last talk. The old man asks if he is sulking about a missed chance, and Jin needs gems. Jin says he would sell them, and the broker works out that he wants cash. The broker pulls his glasses off and brings up the desk Jin once smashed. The first advance team already left, so only the second squad has openings. The broker asks his level, and Jin fires back about the background check. Jin says he never learned his level, since he grew up on the 12th floor. The old man shoots up from his chair, and Jin names a Geyser Duke's labyrinth. The broker gapes and calls him the highest level dungeon baby in Korea. Jin asks why a level matters, and the broker howls at that question. Jin has not gone back since escaping, so he knows nothing about the geyser. The old man drops his face into his palm behind the counter. He grabs a slate and starts sketching the easiest possible explanation. The drawing splits the floors into groups, and it puts Jin at level 12. Floors 1 to 3 sit at the top, barely stronger than a grown adult male. 4 to 6 fill the assault squads with movie superhero levels of muscle. 7 to 9 turn into monster country, and those few get very cocky. The 10th floor down is the deep floors humans never took in the Great War. Jin stares at nothing while the broker admits nobody has much data on them. Deeper berths come with special powers in raw speed and stranger places. The broker asks whether Jin breathes fire or shoots lasers from his eyes. Jin turns halfway and starts listing the weak points he would hit bare-handed. The old man goes red as Jin tells him his whole body is a weak point. Hands fly up begging him to stop, and Jin repeats the question about room. Level 12 should get him a slot, but Jin wants his level written lower. Lower level means lower pay, and Jin says the smaller money is fine. The broker texts him a schedule and warns him off breaking his mother's table. Jin needs a forged dungeon baby card, so the broker asks for an ID photo. The old man holds up a phone while Jin asks what an ID card even is. Back in the cave, 3 little workers stare up with their mouths open. Dominic throws a hand out and shouts that they will be remembered. She finishes the legend line in front of a naga soldier and the workers. Jin walks in behind her, and her grin freezes into a nervous smile. She stammers an excuse, and he tells her to give the report first. The mining is going well, and small gem batches came from the lodes and plants. A hunted beast gave up more, and Jin asks her to hand the gems over. Dominic proudly holds them out, and Jin can only manage a flat grunt. He feeds every gem into the core and turns them into labyrinth energy. The core flashes white and swallows the whole batch in one go. Dominic clamps both hands over her mouth, and Jin shrugs off the spending. He tells her he cannot enter the labyrinth for 2 weeks, and she asks why. A hell spider subjugation is waiting, and his portal would expose him. Harvested gems grow the labyrinth far too slowly for what he needs. A naga archer rises from the summon, the real form of the green worker. Jin sends the archer to the gate to keep watch with the naga soldier. The core gauge reads 2, so days of collected energy are already gone. He plans to keep the last 2 units for the maintenance cost. Then he stops and says her name, and Dominic answers her master right away. He eyes the cracked portal the archer came through and asks about resizing it. The crew is packed under the Paju gate sign, and the final briefing starts before anyone steps inside. The leader up front introduces herself as commander of this Hell Spider expedition, and she expects most of them to have done this before. 22 people are going in, and half the helmets in that crowd already look nervous. She splits them into 7 on the assault team and 15 normal explorers. The assault team lines up by level, and the numbers run from 8 down to a flat 0. Anyone can read the level off the right arm. Briefing over, and the column starts shuffling toward the entrance. A soldier lifts his radio and calls the expedition in. B gate is opening. The doors grind apart while Jin, our main guy, watches from the crowd next to a blonde explorer. The commander shoulders her huge curved blade and pushes the pace because the starting squad went in way ahead of them. Then an explorer is screaming with blood across his face, begging anyone to save him. The shield line braces in front of him, and the men behind it are already soaked in sweat. A whip-tailed lizard has him. Its tongue is pinned, so the tail is the part that kills. The commander screams targeting orders, telling them to poke the armpit and hit the front leg instead of the back. The hurt explorer gets dragged clear while someone slaps him awake, and the crew grumbles that this monster pays nothing. 2 explorers start gossiping instead. 10 years since the war, and everyone useful got rich and left. The blonde one bets most of these people signed up because of debt. His friend answers that dying to debt collectors upstairs is the same as dying to beasts down here. The blonde one stops mid-sentence and points at somebody moving out there. Jin lands on the lizard with his sword out, and the gossip turns into the boss hiring a level 7 mercenary. The commander watches him work with a completely flat face. She yells at everyone to aim for the wounds while the shields push in. The lizard ends up on its back with its legs curled, and one of them calls it dead. She orders the crew to gather the down gems and move before the blood smell spreads. The commander lets out one tired breath now the first fight is done. She turns to Jin and tells him his skills are pretty good. Jin says nothing and keeps his blade up, so she adds that the old man was right to recommend him. Then comes the part he won't like. Showing off is fine until the team runs out of manpower. Jin asks if he did anything wrong, and she says no, it is just worrying. A lizard is a monster even a normal person can face, and the fights explorers cannot face are coming soon. Burning his energy this early will cost him later. Jin tells her not to worry. He claims he only moved because his body was freezing in the cold. She says she is very sure. A masked man reports the crew is ready, and the save point is an hour away. Somebody asks about the dead explorer, and she reminds them blood scent drags beasts in. Jin notices nobody blinks at a corpse here, and a dungeon baby would get a very different reaction. 1 week later, they reach the second floor entrance with 2 lizards killed and 3 light injuries. An explorer holds up a down gem and shouts like he just won the lottery. The others crowd in laughing because they are barely at the start of this floor. One asks what the haul is worth, and the answer is 5,000 for that size. A tired explorer whines about 200 each for risking their lives and gets called an idiot. The group has heard the spiders carry fist-sized gems, and nobody there has seen an intermediate grade one. The same guy asks how much 2 of those would be, and someone snaps back a few thousand per person. He stares into nothing while he does the math on that workload. The scout comes running to the commander, and she asks if the patrol hit a problem. The strange part is the tracks. They thought they had caught up, and suddenly the trail is a mess. She guesses the first team found the spiders, and the scout tells her it is not that. The tracks of the starting squad are smeared all over this spot instead. An explorer with a cross on his helmet runs up asking what the fuss is about. His group was collecting down gems dropping from above, and now their bodies won't move up in the air. The men point at the shapes overhead and yell at them to stop messing around. The commander looks up and her whole expression drops. She calls the entire camp to get ready for battle. The scout rips out a flare cartridge the second she asks. The flare climbs and cuts one red line through the dark. The light lands on bodies hanging in webbing over their heads. The explorers stand there with their mouths open. One hanging shape turns out to have a face, and somebody asks if that is a human. Jin points out she said the tracks were everywhere, and she answers 10 bodies is only part of it. She calls the retreat, and a spider with burning red eyes is already sliding in behind her. A voice screams a warning at her back, and she barely gets her head around. The claw comes down, her eyes flash blue, and she wrenches herself clear. The hit throws her sideways with the weapon still locked in her grip. The spider slams into the middle of the camp. Orders fly for camouflage and for the dungeon babies to take the front. The explorers lock their shields into a wall and bunker down. The commander swings her blade and shouts for the light to stay on because the flares are burning out. Her blade catches an unseen strike in the dark, and orange sparks jump off the edge. Jin stands in front of her with his eyes glowing blue, and the two cover each other back to back. Jin screams for another flare and screams for it fast. The second flare goes up over the shield wall. The red light fills the ceiling, and it is packed with giant spiders that are all coming down at once. A hell spider drops in right behind the brawler while his back is still turned. One of the fighters sees it coming and grins way too wide for this situation. He throws himself off the shield wall and flies over the spider's back. The brawler catches a spider leg in both hands before it can spear him. He holds that leg while the whole body thrashes right above his head. A teammate yells for a toss, and he swings the whole spider around. The knife fighter drops onto the flying spider with a short blade out. The body smashes into the rocks, and he lands clean on the stone next to it. A huge arm hammers it flat into the cave floor with one swing. The shell caves in, and every leg curls up under the weight. A second one gets pinned down and squeezed until it stops kicking. The strongman, their heavy hitter, calls the brawler's cleanup clumsy. He swats a spider out of the air with one open palm. He drives the next one headfirst into the ground. Two more close in on him from both sides with their eyes glowing red. He catches one clean over his head and holds it there. He punches straight through the next spider that jumps at him, then he throws the carcass across the cavern with one arm. Behind the shield line, a gloved hand tightens on a spear shaft. The swordswoman, their blade expert, watches all of this without moving. She draws and the sword clears the sheath in one smooth pull. Her cut opens a grid of red lines across the whole cavern. The spider in front of her falls apart along every single line. The strongman tells her she was taking her sweet time, so he stepped in. She asks why anyone needs full power for bugs this small. The helmeted crew behind them sweat and grip their shields tighter. More spiders pour in, and someone shouts that they are only normal humans. Jin, our main guy, cuts two of them out of the air as he runs past. He lands low on the rock with his blade still drawn. The rest of the dungeon babies hit the swarm from every angle at once. The helmets watch the whole thing with their mouths hanging open. The commander asks if the kid is really only level 7. The brawler stretches and says he is finally warmed up after a dead week. The commander stops in the middle of it and calls the whole thing weird. Records say hell spiders only live on the deeper floors, she tells them. One of his teammates asks if she means these were just a warm-up. The demo guy, their explosives man, says maybe the crew is just too strong. He smiles and says nobody even had to touch the charges he packed. Jin crouches over a dead spider and says these are not hell spiders. He presses the body and points out there is no exoskeleton on it. The fighting style is wrong for the species too, he tells them. The commander starts to argue and Jin cuts her off with one word: wait. Two helmets argue about why the cave is suddenly full of spider webs. A pair of hands pulls a strand tight and the thing is way too thick. One of them looks up at the far wall and calls everyone over. The entrance they walked in through is sealed behind a sheet of webbing. Jin stares at it and what he calls out is murderous intent. He asks the demo guy about the explosives he mentioned earlier. The charges need to go in at the blocked entrance right away, he says. One teammate asks why, since the battle looks finished to him. The brawler laughs that the stronger one always hides and shows up later. Jin says the real hell spider is hiding close by and still alive. The three of them stare at him and say nothing for a second. Then they crack up and ask why they cannot just kill it when it shows. Jin repeats that the things they killed were never hell spiders. Someone starts asking how he would know and a scream cuts him off. The swordswoman screams that a microscopic bug put a wound on her body. The real hell spider towers over her, and she promises it an ugly death. One of the crew screams at her to get away from that thing. She laughs and asks the spider if it has been asleep this whole time. The leg comes through her before she finishes the next word. Blood pours out of her mouth, and her eyes roll straight back. The jaws close around her head with one crunch, and the crew just lost their best blade. A knot of hell spider babies hisses around the crew's boots in the dark. The queen lifts her head above them with her red eyes lit and her jaws open. The commander turns around, and the dark behind her is full of spiders. She yells at every explorer to drop what they are doing and gather up. She grabs Jin and keeps telling him that those things are hell spiders. Jin gives her nothing back, and his eyes stay locked past her shoulder. A helmeted explorer lies pinned on the rock with a spider leg over him. He begs the others to save him and screams that he does not want to die. That cry keeps going in the dark while the commander asks if Jin is all right. Jin stares straight ahead with a flat face and does not answer her. The commander lowers her voice and gives him a short apology instead. She counts 2 hell spider babies and 1 queen inside the swarm. She tells the crew to burn every charge on an exit, cave in or not. The commander then tells Jin flat out that he has seen these things before. She says he handles them like a man with years of practice behind him. A spider head swings through the dark, and the whole cave rings with it. The knife fighter cuts back at it and complains that these bastards never end. The scout points at the bodies hanging above as the spiders stored food. The demo guy shouts that the charges need a little more time. The brawler asks why running is suddenly a given, and the knife fighter says the commander called it. A hell spider crouches on the wall above them, and that thing was the whole goal here. The knife fighter brings up the man who got eaten, and the brawler calls him careless. A shout goes up to dodge because the hell spiders are moving in. The brawler grins with both fists raised and says this is what he wanted. One spider tumbles upside down through the falling rocks after his hit. The scout screams at him and asks if he wants to die down here. The brawler winds up anyway and drives another punch forward. The fist meets a black claw, and both of them stop dead in the air. His arm shakes while the spider leans its whole weight onto him. The brawler catches the leg in both hands and holds it over his head. His face goes red, and he yells that this thing is way too hard. The knife fighter and the scout watch that from behind the rocks. The scout suddenly shouts that another one is already on the way. A second hell spider lunges at both of them with its mouth wide open. Jin drops into the gap between them with his blade already moving. The mouth opens wide enough to take a grown man in one bite. The knife fighter and the scout freeze as a long blade passes over their heads. Jin's sword opens the spider's face from the jaw upward. The head bursts apart where the steel went through it. The scout points at him and asks if that is a monster. The crew behind the barricade yell at him to stop staring and come back. Jin turns to the next spider instead, sword hanging low at his side. He crouches on the broken rock and waits for the opening. The blade goes through the spider's face while it is still coming at him. Jin lands and breathes hard with the tip dragging on the stone. He brings the sword up in front of his eyes and sets his feet again. Two hell spiders box him in, and he asks if they both plan on fighting him. Jin sets his stance and asks how long it has been since he used his electricity. Lightning tears out of his body and blows the rock apart under his boots. A spider gets caught in that white light and comes apart inside it. The whole crew stops moving and stares down at what he is doing. The commander turns and reports that the bombs are finally in place. The demo guy says they are installed, and she tells him to fire them now. Jin keeps a calm face behind the blade while the charges blow. The commander waves him over and shouts that the exit is open. She looks down at him, and whatever she planned to say dies there. Far below, one small figure runs at the spiders instead of the tunnel. Jin jumps with the sword up and current crawling down his arm. His hand locks on the hilt while the sparks snap around his fingers. The swing lands and a wall of light rips the cave floor open. The crew sit in the rubble and watch that with their mouths open. The commander screams at him because nobody gives hell spiders the slip. Rock blows apart between them while he tells the crew to go on ahead. Jin looks back through the dust and says he will see them outside. The crew end up on the far side of the slide, staring at a wall of stone. Jin stands alone on the other side of it with both blades drawn. Jin asks the two spiders if they are seriously laughing at him. He tells them they only cleared a few nuisances out of his way. Jin says they do not understand the situation, so they may as well have fun. A portal opens above him and a column of white light floods the cave. A giant gate stands open ahead with horned figures guarding both sides. Jin stands under a wall of horned naga soldiers and tells them there is nothing to worry about. He calls the hell spiders glorified rats and orders his squad to annihilate every last one. Jin swings his pickaxe up into the dark while spider legs close in around him. One wide arc carves a white line through two of them at once. A spider rears up behind his shoulder and his face does not change at all. The flat of his blade smashes straight into that skull. A green naga lifts its own weapon over the swarm. A naga archer draws his bowstring back while a golden shield bearer covers him. The arrow rips a spider apart before the sound even travels. A second shot blows another one clean off the rock face. The blast lights up the whole cavern and the naga line barely shifts. A huge naga fist winds back against a red sky. A horned warrior catches a diving spider out of the air. He drives it into the ground hard enough to crack stone. Another naga pries a set of jaws apart with one arm. Jin watches the slaughter from a ledge with his hands basically free. Jin says the archers are outperforming actual cannons, which beats his expectations. His partner cheers him on from behind a golden naga, contributing exactly 0 swings. Jin looks up and asks the queen to put a little effort in as well. A hell spider skitters over the rocks while he says he has to show off a bit. A shout of owner cuts in, and Jin names Dominic, his naga attendant. The warning is that the queen has started moving, and the easy part is over. A gray wall of rock and web erupts, and Jin leaps clear of it. He lands in a crouch with the pickaxe braced across his knee. The queen rises above him, dark red, fangs longer than his arm. Her open mouth fills everything over his head. Jin grits his teeth as the fear ailment on every hell spider gets cancelled. He spins around and demands to know what that means for the naga. A tight shot of his face answers before the message is due. The archers and Dominic hold their ground while a soldier behind them dies. A naga warrior takes a fatal wound wrestling a spider off the line. Jin drops low and braces as debris blows past his shoulder. The queen turns her head, one red eye burning through the dust. Two white cuts open across her face in a clean cross. She rears back through the smoke with Jin tiny at her feet. Jin screams Dominic's name across the cavern. The golden naga answers that the gate is in danger from too many spiders. Jin yells back at him to hold on and never finishes the sentence. The queen's claw comes down and catches him mid-shout. Jin tumbles across the rocks with dust blowing behind him. He slams into stone under her body and the wall splits open. Jin comes up furious with one arm wrapped in bandages, calling her a bastard. He sees that she has turned her back on the gate and locked onto him. His partner waits by that gate with two small monsters and a pickaxe of her own. A naga holds up a stone slab with a blue sigil burning on its face. Jin kicks off the wall with his eyes back on the queen. He drives the pickaxe into her side and rides the swing down. The cavern goes white while a second figure charges in from the left. Jin sprints low across the ground with two spiders screeching after him. One of them lunges and gets its face opened. The body drops and Jin slides underneath it. A giant clawed hand clenches shut with white light crawling along it. Jin hangs above her open mouth and says he finally understands her. He grins wide, and that grin is bad news for her. A pale object sits inside those jaws and Jin says she has been hoarding it. He runs the blade along her body while the cave turns red. Her face takes the full hit and she screeches. White smoke blows straight up through the red glow. Jin keeps his eyes locked on her through the flash. One more strike lights the cavern from the ledge upward. His partner jerks around as that light reaches her. She stares at a glowing altar that has just taken a good quality down gem. Jin throws his head back and calls in a naga summon, a magician. A horned shape rises out of the white gate and he orders it to take the spider down. Jin calls his magician out of the white gate and points it at the spiders. The summon comes out rare rank, and its armored face fills the frame. A wide spell circle burns open behind the naga line. Ice runes crawl over the nearest hell spider before it can back away. Frost spears rip through the swarm while Jin watches from the rubble. His grip tightens on the spear shaft as the small ones get wiped out. The big one shrugs off the cold and screams over a naga warrior's head. Jin works out that the spell traded raw force for coverage. The hell spiders take the blast and keep moving, legs still glowing. A naga warrior locks its yellow eye on the closest target. The warrior swings a white blade straight into the spider's jaw. More warriors pile in roaring and cut the swarm down to nothing. The magician keeps a second spell ready beside the ice wall. Jin hears that the warriors finish the hell spiders and turns around. Only the huge one is left and he wonders out loud what to do with it. He jumps clear of a swipe and admits the beast is simply too big. Stabbing at those eyes would never reach the brain and he knows it. Walking into that mouth is off the table too, which is honestly a relief. Dominic shouts that the cavern is already wrecked and begs him to be careful. He wants the ceiling broken so they can dig a way out to the first floor. The Nagas call that too dangerous, and Jin snaps that his attack power is short. He swings anyway, right under the teeth of the open mouth. The beast crashes after him while he lands on a broken ledge. Jin checks over his shoulder and finds the thing still chasing. He grins and promises to repay it for ruining half his life, and the plan is worse than it sounds. Dominic hopes he has a plan and asks if he means to bury it alive. A Naga watches the debris and asks what waits up on the first floor. Dominic admits she can do nothing while her owner fights alone. Even the warriors sworn to guard him only stand there and watch. The beast rampages above them, and she cannot read his intentions at all. Jin screams again that his attack power is not enough. Another warrior steps in beside her without a word yet. He tells her that nobody here was cast aside for being useless. Their owner always walks into danger first so the Naga survive it. Sparkles frame Jin's face while they call this a job only he can do. Dominic bawls about how magnanimous one person can possibly be. The whole squad cheers and swears their turn is coming. Jin cuts in and asks the magician how much mana is left. Then he drags a white blade across the giant spider's face. He lands on a rock and says guiding this thing up would be easy. The walls are the problem, and he hammers the beast again. Far above, a scout crew stops inside a dark first-floor cave with no idea what is climbing toward them. One of them says the tremors underfoot are getting closer. The man in the orange cap wants out, then tells everyone to wait. The floor ahead of them splits open with a long crack. Rock and ice blow upward as the ground finally gives. Jin rides the blast up while the system logs a new entryway. He screams at the crew to run and never look back. The giant spider climbs out of the hole after him. Jin calls the magician, and the hood lights up for the cast. A massive ice spell builds around it down in the shaft. Jin holds his ground and keeps his eyes on the beast. The spider feels the frost below and cannot place the attack. The blast lands weak, and the beast shrugs it off completely. Dominic beams because the whole path up is now sheeted in ice. The spider loses its footing and slides down with the ice. Jin ruffles her hair and says Dominic read the plan perfectly. She blinks, and the magician sweats through the compliment. Dominic says the owner never wanted traps, only raw attack power. The magician takes in the plan for one clean, massive blow. Down in the smoke, a warrior braces as the beast comes past. Dominic orders the squad to pin the spiders before any escape. The nagas swarm the falling beast through broken ice. Claws lock onto its face while they shout for it to hold. Jin drops out of the dark head first with his blade up. The ice shatters into a bright hole where he punches through. The whole crater lights up white around the impact. His blade carves a clean line through the frozen ceiling. He comes down over the red mouth with the edge already swinging, and the chapter cuts before it lands. The victory screen calls it a heroic win over the adult hell spider. Jin stands on the dead spider while his naga lieutenant settles below him. Two naga soldiers come back changed, bigger now and covered in plating. One of them lost an arm in the fight, and the stump is not growing back. Jin asks why the mage stayed the same when it carried most of the fight. His lieutenant explains that mages only level up once a laboratory exists. The upgrade costs 50 down gems, and his counter shows a sad 2. A naga scuttles across the corpses to count what the spiders dropped. The haul comes to 6 quality gems and another 44 smaller ones. Jin turns a red gem over, sorry about the dead soldier, glad about the surplus. 2 of the good gems go into the altar and push the energy to 62. The upgrade begins and burns 50 of it, leaving 12 and a 5-day wait. He pockets a few small gems, so walking out empty-handed looks normal. Jin tells the nagas the fighting is over, but the chores are not. A battle this big pulls beasts and explorers in, so the gate must stay hidden. He wants spider corpses hauled inside and every nearby entrance sealed by magic. The lieutenant checks with the mage, which manages one very weak hiss. Its mana is nearly gone, which is why the poor thing keeps shaking. The rest of the soldiers get the boulder job, burying the gate under rock. Jin gathers gear off the floor and says the road to the first floor is clear. He can return before the timer ends, and this much food covers 5 days. The lieutenant blinks at the food in his hand with a question mark over her head. Jin lets out one long breath now that every order is given. He calls her Dominic, praises her improvisation, and she goes bright red. Everyone else who fought gets to name a reward when he comes back. Jin walks off through the cavern and tells the crew to hold for 5 days. A bright crack of light splits open where the gate waits for him. 5 days later, 3 explorers stand around a tent at the Paju gate. Jin sits inside with a bowl while his teammate from the expedition storms in. She yells that finishing a 2-week trip in 5 days is not the problem. Our guy answers her with a blank face and a bubble of dots. He holds the bowl out and offers her food in the middle of her rant. The teammate shuts her eyes and lets out a defeated groan. She asks what happened, and Jin says he got lucky and ran away. Jin sips his soup and claims he forgot who called that impossible. She studies his face and asks whether he was always like this. The teammate owes him her life and offers to grant any wish he names. She snaps that they are above ground now, so the debt still stands. Jin admits there is one thing after all, and she leans in grinning. The one wish turns out to be the bowl, and her grin dies on the spot. She accepts that as payment in full and heads home to rest. She promises to call and ask about the deeper floors, but he plays dumb. A shop sign reads Labyrinth Down Gem Jewelry, and a laugh rolls out of it. The old gem dealer holds up 12 fat stones and swears to keep quiet. His offer for the lot is 400 million won, damaged gear aside. Jin rubs his chin, which the dealer reads as a complaint about money. Instead, he asks Beck to find him a quiet house for 300 million. He also wants a phone call staged so it looks like he works at the shop. The furious man on that line is Jin's father, calling the whole thing nonsense. Baek insists this is a plain jewelry shop with no reason to go underground. Jin strolls out mid-call because the job story is his ticket into the geyser. Baek grinds his teeth and admits he cannot smash the kid's head in. Dominic waits back underground with a small green snake beside her. Light cracks along the wall and she spins toward the portal. Jin steps through looking wrecked while she welcomes her master home. He cannot keep locking his room to open a portal, so moving out wins. 20 days without one call bought him a lecture he wants to dodge. Jin sighs in front of Dominic and looks completely drained. She panics and asks if he is hurt, and he blames plain tiredness. The corridor outside looks exactly the way it did before the upgrade. Dominic says nothing built itself, yet new buildings and units unlocked. The exterior only changes at level 5, so Jin plans to develop slowly. Then she mentions a guest inside the labyrinth, and his face freezes. The visitor waited at the entrance and asked for the master himself. One party tours every labyrinth, and covering all of Geyser takes real power. Jin looks down at the guest with Dominic peeking past his shoulder. The visitor lies flat on the floor, greeting the king of the great country. The black merchant grins up at him and looks forward to working together. Jin says he understands, and the thing bowing in his dungeon is still grinning. Jin asks the black merchant how he ever found this labyrinth. The merchant grins and says the news about the brave new owner spread fast. Dominique, his naga attendant, whispers straight into his head that the guy is lying. She explains that the black market watches almost everything in Geyser. Dominique warns that being picky is fine, but being underestimated is not. The merchant praises his attendant, and Jin says that part is true. Jin asks what business brings the merchant into his dungeon. The merchant unrolls a cloth loaded with gems and gold bars. He wants a friendly relationship with the new owner, which means sales. Jin asks if they can throw the dangerous merchant out, and Dominique refuses. She says a bad deal here means the merchant spreads their secrets across Geyser. Jin decides to play along, and he calls the whole thing a pain. Dominique adds that merchants carry valuable goods, so Jin agrees to shop. Jin starts asking about down gems when his attendant cuts him off. She smiles and tells him to buy whatever the merchant recommends first. Jin walks over and tells the merchant to show him the good stuff. The merchant clasps his hands, delighted that a customer wants his pick. He promises his best effort for anyone who trusts a lowly trader like him. The bottle holds a pink worm floating in purple liquid called a parasite. The merchant names his price at one high-rank down gem and doubts Jin can pay. Jin asks to hold the bottle for a second, and the merchant hands it over. Jin studies the worm through the glass with one eye narrowed. Dominique nods behind him so he keeps the bottle raised. Jin offers a purple down gem instead, and the merchant weighs it in his palm. The merchant asks for 5 of those, which happens to be everything Jin owns. Dominique confirms that showing your most precious artifact is a very old custom. She adds that the thing stays worthless until he takes it into his body. Jin uncorks it and admits he was not going to keep a worm as a pet. The parasite squeezes out of the bottle with its mouth wide open. The worm slides across his bare shoulder while Jin watches it work. Jin says he feels further from human, and he never was close anyway. That bottle costs him more than 5 gems. Jin turns to his glowing panels and decides to upgrade the labyrinth. Dominique jumps in with a loud yes when he asks for her help. The system pushes the labyrinth from rank 3 up to rank 4. 6 new Naga workers arrive, and outsiders may now visit the labyrinth. The stat scroll shows durability past 5,150 slots. Jin admits the numbers jumped, and he worries that he rushed the upgrade. Dominique explains that owners usually build facilities before upgrading. She points out that Jin himself is over 90% of the fighting power. A fat toad owner lounges on his throne because most owners never leave home. Jin crosses his arms and opens the construction list. The cattle farm costs 20 gems and grows food for the working Nagas. The training center costs 30 and lets a senior Naga drill the troops. The bar costs 40 and pulls information out of visiting creatures. 3 more buildings cost 50 each and sharpen the skills of his force. Jin calls up the labyrinth map and expands it across the wall. He orders the archer and the warriors to scout the beasts living nearby. He drops a cattle farm and a bar right beside the Naga nest. The bigger buildings drain too much energy, so Jin puts them off. A Naga worker hauls in the whole sack of low-rank down gems. The altar swallows 30 gems, and his energy jumps past 160. Jin grins with his hand out and starts calling for a single Naga. He throws both arms wide at the altar and summons an entire military instead. A week later, Jin listens as Dominique reports the finished nest expansion. Spare workers dig hallways and build traps, and Jin checks that they rest. The map fills up with new rooms while fresh troops rotate through patrol duty. Jin says the place feels like a real labyrinth now, but everyone is swamped. The maintenance window shows what 40 soldiers and a training center cost him. Jin covers his face and says they have to dive for down gems again. Dominique asks about his family, since he barely leaves the labyrinth now. Jin says he moved 4 days ago and lives alone on a mountain ridge. His new place sits by itself with a truck parked outside and no shops around. Jin offers her a tour of the surface, and Dominique nearly explodes with joy. The portal starts to close after a full 24 hours inside. Jin tells Dominique to rest too, and she answers with a cheerful okay. Back home, Jin stands by his wardrobe, too busy lately to even eat. The system announces that the parasite finished assimilating into his body. Jin drops to the floor and asks what dominate is supposed to mean. A pale eye tears open in the dark, wide and unblinking. Jin grabs his skull with both hands and screams across the room. He clutches his eye and says the whole thing is burning. Red cracks spread over his face while the eye glows through his fingers. His scream rolls out of the little house and dies over an empty yard. A lonely house sits above the sea, and one small figure walks up the path to it. The commander stops outside with a note in her hand and wonders if he really lives here. A scream rips out of the building, and she snaps her head up at the windows. She kicks the door open and yells his name, asking if he is all right. Jin is down on his knees, breathing hard, both hands clamped around his skull. Red cracks spread over his face while one eye burns, and he keeps screaming. Later, Jin stands there with a tray of 2 mugs and asks if she has calmed down. He apologizes that she had to walk in on him in that condition. She waves her drink and says half his face looked like it was melting off. Both sit at the low table, and he calls it an eye disease from the labyrinth. She starts naming deep floor dungeon babies she knows, and Jin cuts in about the 12th. Her face freezes into a confused huh. Jin tells her he got the eye on the 12th floor inside the Duke Spider's labyrinth. She blurts out that everyone from the 12th floor is either dead or missing. Jin decides she already knows too much, but she looks trustworthy enough. He asks what her rude visit is about and guesses Beck handed over his address. She wants him to come with them on their next exploration. She admits the debt excuse would fail, so she offers a paid team spot instead. The commander figures he is not interested after years alone, and Jin says, all right, her huh comes out flat, and Jin explains he wants back into the underground business. Geyser has changed a lot, so he will tag along only until he adjusts to it again. She is already picturing a 12th floor dungeon baby on her roster, and Jin repeats the terms. She stands up and says she has to rewrite the plans. Sure, he would reject her. Outside the house, she says the next run starts in 4 days and lasts about 2 weeks. The team is 5 dungeon babies and 10 normal explorers, 2 of whom he met. Jin asks how a crew that fled the 2nd floor plans to handle the 6th. She calls them a veteran team that could reach the 8th floor, and Jin lets it go. In the camp, a grinning explorer asks if this is the man who saved their commander. He shakes Jin's hand as Chansik, a level 7 explorer, and Jin calls it pure luck. 2 others argue about which of them ran away screaming from Jin first. The crew tells Jin it is nice working with him again, and he promises their best. At the gate, someone cuts the chit-chat, and Youngho takes charge of the normal explorers. The commander tells Chansik she looks forward to his work, and he says it is his job. Jin asks if she was not the captain, and she just smiles and says he will get it. In her bar, Dominique lies face down on the counter with an empty mug beside her. She lifts her head just enough to order one more from the 2 little nagas. The pair whisper that the attendant droops like this whenever master is away. The yellow one says the bar helps because she used to be far more hysterical. He remembers her going for his tail with a knife, saying it would grow back anyway. One of them mentions a rumor about a secret room holding things that remind her of him. Dominique grabs both their faces and asks about that secret room. Her eyes go wide and sparkly because the idea sounds pretty good to her. Deep in the caves, a scout reports beasts 500 meters ahead, and the team slips past. Chansik sends Hunil after runners and parks Jin at the back with the commander. Chansik raises one finger with a grin while the commander brags about him. Jin admits he sees why the captain outranks him despite the lower level. Detection shows every living thing nearby except whatever hides or camouflages. The commander asks if Jin has that ability, and he says he only sensed them. She says a 12th floor 6th sense is on a completely different level. The spear line behind them starts whispering about the 12th floor. Jun claps a hand over her mouth and says he hates when things get complicated. A soldier calls out that the captain wants every dungeon baby together. The group stops under a huge stone arch carved into the rock. Chansik calls it an abandoned labyrinth since wolf monkeys took their usual path. His detection picks up nothing inside, so he asks the others for their opinions. Someone worries about getting lost, and he says he memorized the route. Jin drops his objections because the place will help him expand his own labyrinth. Chansik raises a hand and sends them to the owner room at the center, and the one man there who already owns a labyrinth stays quiet. Far below the surface, a hooded servant reports that Draken needs more days to heal. His master, an ancient dragon, calls that pathetic for a dragon descendant. The servant kneels and says a detour around Bloodmark land would cost 3 months. Alone, he needs only 2 weeks, so the giant claw dumps the whole job on him. A carved door waits at the top of broken stairs, and the crew calls it the owner room. Jin points out they walked in hours ago and met no beasts and no traps. Chansik says the Great War emptied this labyrinth, so nothing guards it now. The map lists nothing valuable here, though the military wants a base on this floor. Jin asks about maps, and Chansik says the shopping mall sells copies. Only the upper floors are drawn because the army keeps the middle ones private. Chansik sends 2 explorers to plant a motion sensor by the entrance. The rest haul gear for camp, since finishing early buys everyone more rest. His teammate tells him to save his energy, calling him the strongest one here. She teases that a bored man can walk over and inspect the owner room himself. A cracked throne sits in the dark, built for the monster that ruled this place. Jin still cannot picture monsters as kings, and he turns his parasite ability on. His right eye burns red while detection sweeps the chamber. Jin folds over with both hands on his skull, and his teammate shouts his name. He blames the eye disease again and says it hurts less than last time. She promises to keep the others away because the sight would scare them. The teammate leaves, and Jin notes she cannot see the panel floating in the air. No pain reaches him now, and his hands stay calm since he took the parasite over. Jin covers one eye and says an object rests on the altar, hidden from normal sight. He climbs down into the broken rock and digs at the spot he just marked. The red eye flares once more as he runs detection across the debris. A small red stone sits in his palm, and he decides it is no down gem. His fist closes around it before anybody else notices the glow. The system names it an abandoned labyrinth fragment, old, but still useful. Jin reads the panel and figures he saw it because it has a use for him. His eye pulses again while the parasite widens its detection range. He stops mid-thought and turns back toward the throne with a new idea. Blue lights bloom across the whole chamber, and Jin asks if all of that is down gems. Inside his own labyrinth, a small creature hauls a barrel past the storage racks. One of them waves and asks why watch duty ended up standing around in here. The others greet a green worker as Greenie and ask why he carries equipment. They want news about the attendant, and the answer takes a while to arrive. Greenie blows his eyes wide open and lets out one enormous what. She wants a room built for their master, yet feels guilty doing it unasked. A big one heaves a slab and asks why she does not request a room for herself. 2 of them shiver and explain that she ranks above them and lives like a human. The nest would be rough for her, and a voice cuts that sentence short. The attendant leans into the light with a wide grin and calls the plan excellent. Back at camp, Jin looks worn out and strangely pleased with himself. His teammate asks about weird fetishes, and he blames one night without sleep. He admits most of his stones are small and poor, and she groans right along. All night, Jin collected tens of down gems and buried them inside the labyrinth. He also uncovered parts of the map and pinned the exact spots for later. He plans a solo trip back and thanks the parasite, which now wonders about human cooking. Armored explorers pack together near the corridor mouth, and the easy part ends here. Chansik calls the dungeon babies forward, and Jin decides to stay low and summon. Jin narrows his eyes, certain a beast has parked itself on their road out. A hand points around the corner where two groups block the only exit. The noises point to bats or monkeys, and the count comes back as 20 and 8. Chansik admits his ability gives location and numbers, never the species. Another explorer suggests waiting until the two packs thin each other out. Fangs and red eyes crowd the tunnel, both groups far too big to slip past. Nobody finds a way around, so Jin wants to move in before the fighting starts. Chansik panics at 28 mid-sized beasts crammed onto the third floor. The teammate laughs and calls third-floor beasts nothing but little bugs. She points at Jin and adds that the comparison only works for him. Chansik stares at the two of them without a single word in reply. Jin lets out a long sigh at the whole argument. He offers to just fight them, and Chansik admits that would be the best case. Jin pulls a long blade off his back and tells them he will take half. Deep in the labyrinth, two wolf monkeys roar and swing at the explorers. Under the stone arch, one small figure stands while a beast screams past him. Chansik, the team scout, counts about 30 beasts and calls this the day he dies. Jin drops into a crouch with his blade low, and Chansik mutters no way at him. Jin flies through the pack and takes a wolf monkey's head off in one cut. Chansik stares, because one clean hit should be impossible on these things. Two explorers hack away with swords, since dungeon babies fight the way their labyrinth taught them. A beast keeps swinging at anything close, which is how most of them brawl. Chansik watches the corpse pile grow and starts a sentence he cannot finish. Jin stands on the bodies with his sword up, dropping every beast in one strike. His blade goes straight into the throat like the weak spot is painted on. Chansik measures him and puts his speed a notch above Junyoung's. Junyoung, Jin's partner on this run, says Jin came out of the Marcus Labyrinth. Chansik asks if that means the Sarlet Lion's maze in the 7th floor's deepest part, and Junyoung says yes. Junyoung grins and adds that Jin cleared maze after maze to reach the 6th floor. Junyoung stands over the corpses while Jin crouches with his blade below him. Chansik decides a named labyrinth plus raw battle talent is the only explanation. Junyoung keeps quiet because he has to invent a safer story for Jin. More beasts drop from the ceiling and the crew tells each other to stop leaning on Jin. Chansik lifts his spear at a howling wolf monkey and starts his own line. He grins and yells at everyone to show some effort. Jin's parasite eye glows red, and his whole body feels light. A beast lunges with both claws, and the swing looks slow to him. Jin holds his sword as a huge hand reaches in, and he wonders if he was already at his limit. He cuts the beast down while still faking Junyoung's level, and the parasite reports his dormant power waking up. The system tells him his weakness detection just got stronger. A red heart lights up inside the next monster's chest. The ribs sit over it like a cage, so the heart stays covered. Jin rips through the jaw instead and calls the price he paid for the parasite cheap. He still hates that it tried to take him over, so he wants to study it properly. Junyoung shouts that they are done, and Jin says he is finished too. Junyoung stands in the corpse field and points out Jin took 70% of the kills. He leans in and begs Jin to think about the man who covers for his skill. The explorers behind them call Jin a war hero, and Jin admits he overdid it. The crew gets told to grab the down gems before new beasts smell the blood. Chansik calls Junyoung over, and Junyoung tells the scout he did great. Chansik says there is another problem, and the others turn around. A second exploration team is close, twice their size, splitting up to surround them. Junyoung's jaw drops since those scouts watched from the middle of the fight. Shields go up, and the whole line is told to be on guard. Junyoung asks why they are bracing when the newcomers are not beasts. Jin answers that laws mean nothing in Geyser, so teams rob each other's spoils. The strangers walk in armed, with 30 fresh bodies and one exhausted crew waiting. Chansik raises a finger, and his detection is the only reason nobody got ambushed. The scout says they are gathering, so the rivals know their trick already failed. Jin figures the ambush is off, but the line keeps walking closer. Both crews face off, and running is pointless with everyone this tired. Junyoung admits his team leans on Jin more than it should. He asks Jin to handle it if things go wrong, and Jin agrees on the spot. Jin smiles and tells them he likes these guys. The team stands shoulder to shoulder as a voice greets them from the dark. Junyoung's teeth clench at the sound of it. The rival boss spreads his arms with his crew behind him, and Junyoung curses his name. The boss grins and says he is happy to see them. He brings up the spiders that wiped them last time and asks if they carry spare lives. Junyoung tells him to go his own way, and the boss claims he needs this route to the lower floors. Junyoung glares, while armed men close the circle around them. The boss holds out a hand and asks whether they got anything good. He leans into Jin's face, and Jin stares back without blinking. Jin asks who this man is, and Chansik explains the Exploration Association. The government backs them, but they run the labyrinth entrances like a gang. Jin asks how that is allowed, and most teams have already signed up. Under a skull banner, a recruiter works the crowd because geyser money is enormous. Chansik says they dress it as a cause, but it is a fight over money. Jin's red eye narrows, and the parasite weighs 9 dungeon babies against him. About 40 explorers hold weapons with bored faces used to this shakedown. The boss grins, and a fight here would wipe out everyone on Jin's side but him. Jin looks over the crowd, and they are getting on his nerves. The rivals close in around him while his eyes burn red. Jin's eyes burn red in the dark because the rival crew will not back off. Junyoung feels the pressure first and whispers that this is killing intent. His whole body locks up, and he tells himself the danger is real. Sweat runs down his jaw while he checks whether the Labyrinth King stands behind him. The rival boss bursts out laughing and calls the whole scare a prank. Junyoung shouts that his fear had nothing to do with him. Chansik stands beside them with his eyes shut and says absolutely nothing. The boss whines that this crowd is turning him into the villain. He throws up a thumbs up and says the spiders must have chewed them badly. He winks and claims a man this important cannot help everyone. Junyoung tells Jin to quit acting calm, and Jin only asks what that means. Junyoung says the pressure felt like the king of the labyrinth breathing on his neck, and Jin apologizes for the habit. The rest of the explorers felt nothing, and Chansik says their senses are too low. Junyoung admits the boss knows him because they come from the same labyrinth. A younger Junyoung stands beside that man, who used to lead people well. The boss tilts his head back grinning, and money and freedom ruined him. The team agrees to collect the beasts here and go home while the profit holds. Jin points out that the 6th floor was the whole goal of this run. Junyoung answers that the boss closed in once and could do far worse next time. A huge expedition drags every beast toward it, so caution buys them nothing now. The hunters report that the beast collection is finally finished. One shout gathers everyone in the dark, and the whole line turns around. The exit opens ahead of them, and the walkout takes a week. Explorers cheer and shove around the payment list, every single one of them alive. A teammate says they only got out because they left before trouble started. Jin decides the association and that boss are worth digging into properly. He stops at a gem appraisal shop where the name already rings a bell. The old man calls the boss the brute of the association, loud and hard to miss. Jin hears that a minimum level rule pushed explorer survival way up. A grinning beast towers over a raid back when half an expedition died. Jin decides the association works like a guild out of a comic book. The old man snaps that geyser information comes as rumors and nothing better. He rubs his chin, and the next thing he remembers is worse than any rumor. Human hunters, the old man calls them, and Jin repeats the name. High-level dungeon babies band up and rob other expeditions of everything. Bandanas cover their faces, and every one of them files his teeth into points. Jin thanks him for the warning and promises to watch for those crews. The old man asks about down gems, and Jin says this job paid in cash. Jin figures the public backs the association, yet Junyoung hates it anyway. He digs up nothing solid, so he drops the whole mess and walks home. Down in his own labyrinth, Dominique sprints across the stone floor. She stops short with her mouth open and sweat on her cheek. Jin tells his attendant that the expedition wrapped up earlier than planned. He asks whether the labyrinth is fine, and she goes quiet on him. Dominique finally says a guest is already waiting for him in the pub. Jin guesses the black merchant, but she names an underelf mercenary instead. His face drops because an elf is the last thing he expected down here. Jin walks off to judge the visitor himself while Dominique clutches her head. She warns him that underelves carry neither loyalty nor pride. Jin asks why she let one inside instead of throwing it straight out. Dominique admits the Naga labyrinth has nobody skilled at scouting. The archers see far, yet the Nagas are far too big to sneak anywhere. Map production keeps slipping, so Jin takes the whole decision on himself. The pub door swings open, and a one-eyed bartender looks up. A wine glass and a small plate sit ready on the counter. Most of the tables stand empty, with one lamp burning in the corner. Jin steps inside with Dominique behind him and starts to grin. A white-haired elf glares back at him, and Jin has to decide whether a mercenary with no loyalty is worth hiring. Dominique keeps her weapon raised at the visitor, an under-elf mercenary. She yells that the guest is being rude while Jin stands right beside her. Dominique leans in and demands some respect for the throne she serves. The mercenary answers with nothing at all and stares straight back. She kneels on the pub floor and calls Jin the sole lord of the throne. Jin grins and cuts the flattery short with one word: speak. She gives her name and admits that mercenary work is her whole trade. Jin asks why she walked up to him holding a weapon, and Dominique gasps. Her hand still grips the knife, and Jin says she meant to stab him. Jin shouts his attendant's name to pull her back from the visitor. Dominique shuts her eyes and backs off with sweat on her cheek. The mercenary bows deep, and Jin tells her he hates flowery talk. She admits a human sitting on a labyrinth throne is new to her. The mercenary wanted proof that he deserved her service before offering it. Jin asks if he passed, and she says a direct fight is unwinnable. Scouting and gathering information turn out to be her specialty. Jin hires her on the spot, and Dominique screams in his face. Dominique panics, and Jin reminds her that she asked for a scout. Jin offers her a walk around the labyrinth while they keep talking. The mercenary smirks, and Dominique glares at the back of her head. They pass a cart of raw gems, and she judges the whole place sloppy. Jin leads her down a corridor with Dominique trailing behind them. She spots the core sitting wide open, visible from the hallway itself. No trap guards the entrance, and the workers below look relaxed. The mercenary wonders whether this human knows what a master does. A lizard worker leans on her arm, and she goes stiff on the spot. Two workers squash each other's faces while she reports the slacking. Jin calmly explains that the pair is off duty today. He argues that proper meals and rest beat working anyone to the limit. Jin grins that overused muscle stops paying off because he once dug on an excavation team. She decides his mindset is far too naive for a labyrinth master. They head for the training hall, and she expects this place to fall soon. Dominique says the mages have the hall, and the mercenary quietly settles on a plan of her own. Days later, Jin sits on the throne, unhappy with how slowly things grow. Workers haul gems from the load, barely enough to cover their pay. A rabbit drinks near clean water, so food is the one easy problem. Soldiers hunt beasts outside the walls for extra gems and supplies. Jin holds up a red gem worth 3 points and counts the daily haul. His summon panel shows 50 soldiers eating most of his stored points. Dominique counts 2 soldiers lost in the latest battle. Jin says commanding every fighter gets harder as the force grows. She adds that their healer is the only reason the army survived. The state of the first floor makes no sense to her at all. She then tells him the Naga labyrinth has no first floor. Jin whips his head around and asks her to repeat that. He insists he fell in from above, so this is the second level at worst. In gray memory, Jin stands over rubble, and the labyrinth devoured him. He grabs his head while Dominique explains how masterless labyrinths lure people in. Old human gear lies in a pile, all of it left from the war era. Jin rubs his neck because the path he took with the reporter was illegal. Dominique has never left this place, so she cannot name the floor either. Jin slumps sideways in the throne and calls the whole thing troublesome. He asks whether the mercenary is still around, and Dominique bristles. Jin says a wanderer who crossed the underworld might know the answer. The mercenary sits at the bar with a drink and the bartender beside her. She greets him with heavy praise, and Dominique snorts at every word. Dominique yells that an ungrateful hire belongs nowhere near the throne room. The mercenary suggests adding a door, and Dominique nearly explodes. Sparks jump between the two of them until the bartender tells them to quit it. Jin asks whether she wandered the underworld before taking this job. She recalls humans splitting the underworld into numbered floors. Born down here herself, she never understood that human system. Jin accepts the answer since the numbering was never hers to keep. She offers to describe everything she saw before being hired here. The mercenary pauses, then apologizes for what she has to say next. Right beside the Naga labyrinth lies the labyrinth of the Flood Dragon King, a monster that lived through the war of the underworld, and Jin is now its neighbor. The Flood Dragon King's lair sits right beside the Naga labyrinth. The mercenary stopped there on her way over, and the place predates the Great War. Its master is Anaxtus, strongest of the flood dragons and an old throne holder. Jin asks the distance. 4 days by a direct path is far too close. Decades of growth means their army outclasses his on every count. Uneven labyrinths never stay separate, and the weaker one gets swallowed. She saw plenty of that while digging attack routes for her old employer. Jin asks how she knows the flood dragons already noticed the Naga labyrinth. She points at the land between them, ruled by the blood leopard. They threw troops at that leopard to open a path, and it went badly. Nobody spends soldiers for fun, so their route bends around the territory. Flood dragons crawl, so a 2-month window drops into Jin's lap. Jin notes a hired blade knows a suspicious amount about all this. She used to work for the flood dragons, and Dominique's jaw falls open. Dominique screams the word spy loud enough to rattle the pub. She sells her sword, and the Naga King holds the contract right now. Jin hires her, and she refuses any plan that means fighting a flood dragon. No fighting involved. He wants everything she learned inside that labyrinth. She warns him the price will hurt, and Jin waves the price away. She drinks, goes quiet, then puts the trip at about a week. The mercenary leaves with packed food while Jin prepares his own side. Dominique warns her master that the woman hides a second agenda. Jin knows. Begging work from a weak labyrinth right before a war makes no sense. Still, he doubts she serves the flood dragon. Aggressive contracts fit better. Her voice carried zero loyalty whenever Anaxtus came up at the table. Dominique is sure she will sell every scrap of Naga information. Jin wants that. Let them hear about Naga soldiers and empty gem vaults. All of it is true except the part where the labyrinth trembles. She also told him Anaxtus hid through the entire Great War. Humans owned a weapon that could kill him, so the dragon buried himself away. Now the Naga King is a human, the one species that scares Anaxtus. Jin heads out for 3 days and promises Dominique a gift. Up on the surface, a man sprawled on a bed ignores his buzzing phone. He grabs it and grumbles about calls landing on his day off. The name on the screen wakes him up fast. Jin is calling, and the guy asks if he wants to join his team. Not that. Jin asks Junyoung, the man he saved, for a shopping list. 1 week later, an invading squad climbs through the deep tunnels. Their leader grins with every tooth on display. He flexes his golden arms for the soldiers marching behind. The Nagas are nothing, he brags, and nobody can scratch him. Not luck either. He credits his class and a noble bloodline. Then comes the punchline. He is a descendant of the dragons. His soldiers mutter that he is off again. One whispers that nothing scratches them either and gets hushed. The last careless comment bought them a full epic on that title. The same mouth stayed shut, crossing the blood leopard's territory. He spins around, asking what they said. They swear they were amazed. The soldiers pile on flattery until he calls them too kind. Someone asks about a rival since he wants a nap on the Naga throne. He spots movement and yells that he found another Naga. A worker with a pickaxe freezes, clueless about the invasion. The worker bolts, and the squad refuses to lose their free guide. Draken, the squad leader, sprints ahead while his soldiers beg him to wait. The worker ends up cornered, and Draken demands payment for the sweat. Light cuts across him as he orders it to lead them to the labyrinth. A voice cuts in, asking whether dragon descendants are always this noisy. A man stands on the rock above with the worker, thanking it for the job. The whole squad looks up and demands the stranger reveal himself. Jin turns around and calls himself the Naga King. A soldier wants an Anaxtus told, but Draken wants the human finished here. Draken challenges him personally, and Jin is done with the dragon speech. 50 times he heard it while waiting, so he tells Dominique to start. Nagas rise from the dark on every ledge, and Draken calls it a cowardly ambush. Then he squints at the shapes closing in around his squad. Those Nagas are workers, and each one is holding a rifle. The aim order goes out while Draken yells about risking workers. He asks how a king feels nothing for the people he shoves forward. Dominique perches above the invaders and tells the loud lizard his place. She raises a launcher and says workers and one servant are plenty. The word fire drops, and the volley rains down on Draken from every angle. Deep underground, the flood dragon lair sits carved into black rock. A hooded visitor walks the maze alone, and every trap here exists to kill intruders. Workers haul stone until their bodies quit, with no breaks and barely any food. The visitor is the informant, and he calls this whole grinding pit a labyrinth. He kneels in front of the Flood Dragon King and greets him as the mighty ruler. Yellow eyes open in the dark because the informant already told the Naga about this place. He explains the Naga will arm for war, but too few hands means too few down gems. The informant plans to feed on that desperation and aim them at the blood leopard. He asks the king to invade while the Naga bleed against that beast. The king agrees on the spot and sets the strike a week after the Naga arrive. His army leaves for the Naga labyrinth tomorrow, which should be impossible. The informant points out that flood dragons need 2 months to cross that ground. The king answers that he never planned on taking a normal route. Down in the tunnels, a golden flood dragon roars while sparks burst off his scales. Naga soldiers open fire and the muzzle flashes light the whole corridor. A stone-skinned soldier laughs and says lowly human weapons cannot hurt them. A round smacks into his face and cuts that sentence in half. His palm comes up full of holes, and the laughing stops right there. The stone soldiers panic and shout about reporting back to King Anaxtus. Retreat is off the table because the Naga guns already have them boxed in. Bullets chew through the group while one dark figure watches from a ledge above. Those weapons came from an illegal factory on the surface that went bust years ago. Jin got a crate of them from a woman on the surface who says his connections run deep. She asks why he bothers when he is stronger than her, and he calls them toys. The guns work fine against soldiers, though they rarely kill anything outright. Dominique loves them, and she keeps a mounted gun screaming into the dark. Rounds hammer the golden dragon while Jin watches from the back of the cave. The dragon glances at the sparks bouncing off his shoulder and goes quiet. He checks both hands and cannot find one scratch on either of them. Bullets keep pinging off his hide while the stone soldiers behind him drop. A grin spreads across his snout and he lets out a short laugh. He flexes both arms and yells that these attacks mean nothing to him. Dominique keeps the trigger down with her teeth clenched, and it barely matters. The dragon rises to full height while rounds spark off his chest and die there. A second flood dragon jerks back with his mouth open and one claw raised. Another spark bursts off golden plating without leaving a mark behind. The big one swings a fist forward and shouts that the Naga are too weak. His blow cracks the ground, and the stone soldiers scramble around him. He laughs into the smoke and asks whether that is all the Naga have. Dominique aims at him, ready to answer until Jin tells her to wait. Jin takes this one himself and his little green pet calls after him. The dragon spots him and jeers that the king himself is stepping up. Jin walks in low with his sword out while the dragon stands and waits. He crosses the gap in one dash and the dragon barely turns his head. Jin's eye locks onto the target as the blade comes around. The sword rakes the dragon's side while Jin runs straight past him. The dragon lurches forward with the cut already open on his back. Then he yelps ouch twice, loud and childish, over a scratch that shallow. He screams that it hurts while Jin studies him from one step away. The dragon's claw comes down and Jin catches the whole thing on his blade. The clash throws a white burst across the tunnel and swallows both of them. Dominique screams for her master and Jin answers that he is all right. He stands up inside the smoke and the dragon cannot work out what he is. The dragon giggles that he landed a hit, though his instincts are terrible. Jin wonders whether this thing is joking or actually mocking him. Rock explodes as the dragon barrels through the wall to reach him. The dragon's head snaps back with a scream tearing out of his throat. 2 bright cuts open across his chest before his arms can come down. Jin steps out with his red eye lit and the blade held low. The dragon grabs at him and still finds no weak spot on the guy. A parasite already boosted his body, and his best hit changes nothing. The blast throws smoke everywhere while Dominique watches from the rocks. She screams for Jin, and the dragon asks whether he finally got him. Jin calls him a descendant of the dragons and says he shares their weakness. The dragon swears he has no such thing, so Jin names the gap between his wing blades. Jin walks out of the white cloud with the sword hanging at his side. He grins and tells the dragon that spot is the target of his next attack. The red eye glows wide open with cracked skin spreading around it. Jin watches the dragon's aura change the moment his weak spot gets named. Horns rise out of the dark, and this fight is starting over from zero. Smoke fills the cavern and Jin stands inside it with a brand new aura. His face lifts into view with one red eye and one blue one. Draken, the dragon mercenary hired to kill him, swings his whole weight down. The horned head charges in because he wants a hit before Jin can move. Jin's blade cuts through the guard, and the attack finally goes through. A red cross glows on Draken's chest, wide open and completely unguarded. Jin grips the sword behind the steel and refuses to overthink the bait. He runs down the slope to see what the mercenary is really aiming for. A few seconds earlier, Draken is screaming under a wall of red light. He curses the Flood Dragon King, who sold this place as a tiny labyrinth. His body shakes because that king promised him a clueless little master. Draken admits the earlier hits still hurt, sturdy body or not. A month of recovery beats dying, so he decides to fake mercy and run. His eyes pop when the spot where Jin was standing turns up empty. Two long cuts open across his chest before he sees any swing at all. Blood floods his eye, and he has never once seen his own before. His claws shake over the wound while he screams about dying here. Jin's shadow swallows the wall, and the mercenary curls up tiny under it. Draken's face falls apart completely as he sobs that he is already dying. Jin swings the blade down with red wings spread wide behind his back. His face fills the panel, red eye and blue eye, and he says nothing. Dominique, his naga aide, watches from the rocks with a small green minion. Draken lies flat and begs, dumping the blame on the Flood Dragon King. Dominique reports the Flood Dragon soldiers are handled, and Jin thanks her. Then she asks the awkward question of what to do with the prisoner. Draken hears that and squeals from the floor with claws over his mouth. She notes killing him is easy, but normal attacks cannot even scratch him. The mercenary jumps in and swears he will serve loyally from now on. Jin points out that a man who ditches one boss will ditch the next. Draken swears on the name of the dragons never to betray the Naga King. Golden light bursts out of his body the instant those words leave his mouth. Dominique tells Jin this is a dragon vow and she has never seen one. Dragons bind themselves like this to brag about their noble species. A broken vow kills the dragon on the spot in horrible pain. The strange part is the missing wings, which means Draken is no pureblood. Jin asks if the penalty runs in the bloodline, and Draken confirms it. The lizard giggles proudly, and Jin cannot find one shred of nobility in him. Jin keeps him alive anyway, because that unbreakable body has a use coming. A few days later, Jin asks whether the Flood Dragon King is even tougher. Draken hangs strapped to a target board and mentions he still hurts inside. Dominique grins behind Jin while he raises a launcher onto his shoulder. Jin calls, dodging an act of betrayal, and the blast slams into Draken. A glowing white weapon goes to the lizard's face for the next test. Rikshasha, his elf scout, walks in and remarks on the captured Draken. Jin asks the two of them whether they already know each other. Their duties never overlapped, and she doubts the lizard remembers her face. Jin drops that and asks which direction the Flood Dragons will march from. Their forces are still gathering, which leaves roughly 1 month of time. 1 month cannot spawn an army to match a labyrinth decades older. Rikshasha offers a risky suggestion, and Jin turns his head to hear it. Her plan is to go and subjugate the Blood Leopard. A red beast guards a crimson gem of the highest grade, perfect for the war. She wants a week of gem farming first because failure ends the labyrinth. Dominique agrees with her, since no safer road exists here. Jin asks Rikshasha to draw the full route into the leopard's territory. The map only reaches the entrance, and he tells her that is enough. Jin turns and walks off through the tunnel while Dominique trails behind. He rubs his neck and says it is time for him to head out. Dominique asks if he plans to haul back more human weapons. He says no and tells her he is dipping into his savings instead. Draken, still tied to the board, quietly asks when he may move again. He crouches in a dark rock passage and picks his spot. 3 map cards for the first, second, and third floors sit in his hand. The cards shred apart while the system sinks every floor at once. A green grid map of the labyrinth opens in front of him. A red arrow marks the stash where he once hid his down gems. That walk from the first floor took 4 days on his last expedition. Jin's red eye lights up as he orders Parasite to find every gem in sight. He drops into a crouch and has his leg strength boosted too. The floor explodes behind him when he fires himself into the tunnel. Gem messages stack up the screen faster than anyone could read them. Jin is not running tens of times faster than a human, but hundreds, and the Blood Leopard is waiting. Jin's Naga aide stops in the stone corridor when she hears footsteps in the dark. Jin walks in with a heavy sack and asks if the labyrinth stayed calm during his 2 days away. She tells him it was quiet, then asks what happened up above. He tips the sack out and down gem messages stack across the whole screen. She asks how he pulled in that many, and he hands the credit to his parasite. The counter settles just past 400, which is nowhere near enough for a war. His grade 1 and 2 soldiers wave their little spears around, and those spears would bounce off anything serious. Jin checks the clock with her because the mercenary Rikshasha gave them about a month. He gambles 100 gems on upgrading the labyrinth to level 5, and the timer starts at 7 days. Jin decides to spawn a couple of units right now in case that month was a lie. The menu reminds him about the Naga Gatekeeper, a grade 4 defender that lets nobody past without his permission. The gems drain and a spawn light cracks open the floor in front of them. Out in the rock, Rikshasha walks the long way back toward the Naga Labyrinth. The Flood Dragon King has decided to cut straight through the Blood Leopard's land instead of going around. Rikshasha counts the trip at 1 day each way, so the king lands here within a week. She is certain the Naga side has no chance, and then she stops mid-thought. A huge shape unfolds out of the tunnel wall right above her. Jin yells at his brand new gatekeeper to stop because she works for this labyrinth. Rikshasha hands over the map she was sent out to draw. The paper burns red in Jin's hand as the system swallows it, and she notices his army got a lot bigger. Jin asks what she means, since these units are not the ones coming with him. They stay home and guard the Naga Labyrinth while he is gone. The squad that actually joins the subjugation steps forward, and it is a very short lineup. Jin calls them elites, mostly because they have survived a fight before. Rikshasha says the force is far from enough, and Jin tells her he will be fighting alongside them. She keeps pushing, wiped out, maybe killed, so he asks if she is looking down on his soldiers. Jin holds her stare and says nothing else. She lowers her head and calls him King of Naga, sure that she was foolish to give them a chance. Rikshasha hopes he rested during those 2 days, and Jin says he got plenty. Jin asks her to walk in front as their guide. The whole column forms up for the Blood Leopard subjugation and leaves immediately. She works out that the map job was only an excuse to send her away for a couple of days. The group marches through Red Rock toward the Leopard's ground. They arrive, and Rikshasha asks him to keep every soldier silent from here on. The Leopard has thin defense, but hunts by stealth, so it will find them long before they find it. Jin points out how nervous she looks, and she admits the thing has ruled this region for decades. Jin glances back at her while the soldiers keep moving. Rikshasha thinks this guide job might be the one that gets her killed. Her head snaps up when she feels killing intent, heavy and completely controlled. Dark eyes open all around her, and a red voice says her name from behind. That voice tells her she dies the moment she looks back. Jin's red eye burns through the dark, and he announces the interrogation. The two of them stand apart in an empty canyon, and Rikshasha says she has no idea what he means. Jin repeats how she sees his home, a soft labyrinth where the workers get breaks. He was born in the underworld as well, so he knows how things really work down here. Jin cares for allies and kills enemies, and he still cannot tell which one she is. He accuses her of selling information about the Naga Labyrinth to the Flood Dragon King. Rikshasha kneels and argues that old work for that king proves nothing. She admits she was rude the day they met, but a real spy would have buried that job. Rikshasha says she spied for him and asks what she gets back for it. She shouts that every word was true, and Jin simply agrees with her. That agreement is the part he cannot solve, so he asks what she is actually after. Jin wants to know why she keeps walking between two labyrinths. Rikshasha says she has no objective and reminds him there is no evidence. Jin asks her whether she has ever heard of parasites. She has only heard the stories, and he tells her one is attached to him. Then he drops the second half of that. She is carrying one as well. A knot of white eyes crawls out from between her own hands. It wraps her whole body while Jin explains he planted a fragment the day they met. The fragment rode along and got a full tour of the Flood Dragon Labyrinth. Rikshasha goes silent because he watched everything she did over there. She asks why he would still give her another chance, and Jin says he has come to like her. Jin lets out a long sigh, one red eye glowing in the dark. Rikshasha admits she looked down on him and that she serves neither labyrinth. She only ever wanted revenge, nothing more than that. The Spirit King is the one she is hunting. A pale spotted body slides out of the dark behind her, and she knows she is about to die. She turns anyway, and the red voice reminds her that it warned her. A monstrous head tears into the light with bared fangs, and looking back is exactly what she just did. Jin's follower slams down onto cracked stone with his sword still up. His face fills the panel wet with sweat because he never saw the hit coming. He shouts the name of the blood leopard while white claws rip through the dark. Jin sits in a crater of red crystal with his blade out and his coat torn open. The claws come back around and rake the rock right where he was kneeling. A long, pale body leaps through the shattered stone and disappears into the glare. The clawed head swings in with one red eye burning and goes straight for Jin. Jin plants his feet while white slash lines cross the whole cavern around him. He drops low against the wall and lets the beast keep circling. The parasite crawls over his face and white eyes open across the mask. His blade catches the leopard in mid-lunge, and he tells it that he can see it now. The follower stares up from the rubble with his mouth hanging open, still not caught up. The leopard's jaws burst apart in a spray of blood and broken rock. From far back, the two of them look tiny in a canyon of wreckage. The follower admits he always looked down on Jin for being born human. Jin turns with the mask spread over half his face and asks how long he plans to sit there. Then he offers the leopard one free chance to walk away from this. A second meeting, he says, comes with no talking at all. The follower asks whether Jin can really see the blood leopard, and Jin says he can. The beast lies curled on the cavern floor and stays still, probably healing. Jin fixes his collar and admits the parasite is draining his stamina far too fast. The follower yells for his master because the blood leopard was never the only problem. A second leopard rears up over a squad of armored naga and someone screams a warning. It smashes through the line and throws armored bodies in every direction. Jin sprints in and swings a blade of white light across the whole cavern. The jaws snap shut on empty air while that swing opens up its face. He lands low with red eyes wide and calls the thing a bastard. The monster towers behind him as he complains that the spider fight already bored him. Jin tells the parasite to save its power, one eye red and the other still blue. The follower pulls his sword and offers to back up the naga. Jin refuses the help and tells him to stand there and watch, which is a rough way to get benched. He looks ahead and warns the follower not to look down on his soldiers. One naga soldier waits coiled in the dark with a curved blade in each hand, and that soldier is about to matter. Green light pours off a pair of raised hands deeper inside the tunnels. A naga leans over the mage and says the wounded die the moment the healing stops. The mage's white mask fills the frame while a naga orders them protected at any cost. A blade scrapes past the second leopard's grin and they swear to hold until their king arrives. One soldier throws his head back and roars into the fight. The leopard's claw crushes down and a naga hand strains to hold it back. It slaps a soldier off his feet and drives him into the rock wall. Another one bares his teeth as the claws wrap around his chest. The mouth opens wide and bites clean through a naga arm. A wounded soldier stares out with yellow eyes and nothing left to fight with. The leopard grabs him and throws him the length of the cavern. He lands in the middle of the floor and the stone bursts under the impact. The soldier pushes himself up on all fours inside the dust cloud. His face comes back up scarred and set, both eyes still burning yellow. The leopard stands over a field of fallen naga while he keeps his blade raised. The naga soldier grips what is left of that blade and his eyes turn red. He drives the broken stub of it deep into the leopard's side. Claws the size of pillars sweep past and tear the ground into strips. The beast bites down on his weapon arm and lifts him off the floor. A blast throws dust across everything and he crouches inside it. His face fills the panel while he thinks about the naga labyrinth falling. He remembers Jin arriving as their new master in a plain jacket. An older memory shows the armored guard he used to be, shield and spear in hand. The soldier stands in the smoke and repeats the vow he swore back then. A roar tears loose rock off the wall and drowns the rest of it out. The jaws open again and he decides that whole vow was wrong from the start. The leopard pins him flat while he grins up through the pressure. Claws hammer the ground beside him and throw dust over his body. He shoves a blade up against the beast's belly with both arms locked, the teeth close, so he wedges that blade sideways between them. The jaws grind down on steel while the red eye glares past it. The mouth opens wide enough to swallow his whole body. The teeth start closing, and a system box says the requirements are satisfied. Cyan fire erupts off his arm from inside the leopard's mouth. The flames run up the snout while he asks what kind of soldier he even is. Fire pours out of the jaws as he says the king should never be the one protecting him. He burns white blue and tells the leopard that today it dies with him, and the Hall of Heroes calls this heroization. The blood leopard, the apex predator of this cave, drives a pale claw down through cyan fire. It bends over a burning body sprawled flat on the cracked rock. Its claws rake the stone and kick a wall of dust into the dark. The jaws open wide and every tooth points at that blue glow. A burning hand shoots up and catches the upper jaw before it shuts. The Naga soldier, one of the king's own men, wrenches the mouth apart with both arms. The leopard slams him down and his fire smears across the broken floor. The teeth close on him and grind him deeper into the throat. Claws hammer the rubble again while white smoke swallows the whole pit. A hand with a yellow cuff pushes out of the debris, and he asks if that thing really rules this territory. He stands up with new horns and red eyes, then cracks his knuckles in plain disappointment. Up on the ledge, the enemy commander stares down and refuses to believe it. Sweat runs along his jaw while he says the word heroization out loud. A red naga and the glowing soldier hold their blades, since heroization demands real experience. The soldier's profile stays calm, and nobody can predict when that change fires. Jin, the man these nagas call king, warns the commander to stop looking down on his soldiers. The commander's yellow eyes narrow as he asks how many surprises are left. Far below, Jin stands alone in the crater while the commander mutters about a naga king. Jin's red and blue eyes lift, and the system confirms the heroization finished. He raises his sword in front of a red-eyed rock face and admits he understands none of it. Red power explodes off the blade because he sees no reason to hold back now. Back in the pit, the soldier lunges and swipes at the leopard's snarling head. He lands hard and the long tail whips past his boots across the stone. He glares straight ahead with red eyes wide and his jaw locked tight. The jaws swing back at the group and roar over a masked naga on the floor. A claw sweeps low over the soldier's arm, and the wounded naga beside him, a red gem, glows on dark hide before the body vanishes, and that hiding is the real problem. The soldier throws his arms wide and yells at an empty cave to come out and fight. He shouts for it to show itself, and Jin knows that leopards fight from cover. Their two faces sit side by side, and only Jin can track that kind of speed. Two nagas stand guard over a fallen one, so the soldier cannot chase freely. The mage steps out of the shadows in a white mask with a naga right behind. Another naga catches him and warns that his organs are wrecked. The soldier agrees and tells him a battle is still running, so he should rest. The jaws explode down out of the dark and land straight on the soldier's back. The mage cuts in front of him with his cloak flaring and a pink gem lit. A crystal wall erupts out of the ground and seals the leopard away. Someone screams for the mage as his gloved hand drops back down. Inside the barrier, he says his last mana went into it, so nobody needs guarding. Through the blue crystal, the soldier hears that no power on Earth breaks that wall. He grins and says he disagrees with most of that, then asks for the floor too. The mage asks about the floor while the soldier braces behind the shards. He announces that he plans to blow this place apart and the ground splits. The leopard skids across cracking rock as dust climbs the cavern wall. His face stays flat while stone tears loose all around his hands. A white blast rips the floor open and throws slabs in every direction. The soldier stands in the ruins with the crystal wall behind him, and the leopard has no cover left. He tears a boulder loose and grins with his arm already cocked back. The jaws burst out of the smoke and he shouts that he can see it now. The leopard crouches in the open with nothing left to duck behind. It rears over him and roars loud enough to flatten the dust around them. He crosses his arms and digs his heels into the broken floor. A pale claw catches him and drags him sideways along the ground. The soldier locks both hands on it and gets shoved back into the rubble. The leopard springs away over the rocks, and he growls that it ran again. His arm snaps out, and he tells it that nothing escapes him this time. He goes quiet with sweat on his cheek and his eyes still tracking. The leopard slides in behind the crystal wall, and he calls that shameless. Its body presses flat against the blue spikes with one red eye burning. He tells it plainly that it underestimates every naga in this cave. The soldier's hand closes on the jaw from behind while it twists away. He grins wide and finally has that mouth locked in both fists. The tail coils past his shoulder, and he refuses to let the grip go. His expression turns furious, lips pulled back, hair flying in the shockwave. His teeth clench hard and the veins stand out along his neck. He forces the mouth open while it screams against his chest. A white hand settles on the red hide and warns it not to overreact. He slams it flat inside the crystal ring, and he holds the jaws open while calling this only the beginning. The blood leopard's jaws hang open, every tooth pried apart by force. Its huge body lies flat, and a naga soldier is pinned under the head. He looks up with red eyes, horns bent, hair blown out. He wipes his mouth and mutters that this beast is so damn persistent. Jin steps onto the corpse above him and calls the whole thing marvelous. The soldier drops to a knee, and Jin admits he only asked for time, not a finished kill. Jin calls it great work, hero. The soldier says they lost an ally through his shortcomings. Jin asks if he plans on making that death be in vain, and the soldier swears he never would. The dead worker lies in yellow armor. Jin says the ones fighting with guns died fearlessly too. Sweat runs down the soldier's cheek while Jin warns him about ranking allies by worth. The soldier vows to ingrain every word in his heart, criticism instead of praise for a fresh hero. Rikshasha, the elf scout, watches from the rocks and cannot question this king's qualifications. Jin says a great feat deserves a reward, and the spider incident went unpaid too. The soldier freezes in the dark as one word comes down: Quintus. Great generals in history carried that name, and a hero needs a title that fits. Quintus's eyes blow wide. From now on, he is general of the Naga army. He kneels on open rock and vows eternal service to the great king of the Nagas. Two Nagas haul the leopard toward the labyrinth, and Jin asks if that load is too heavy. They shout back that it is nothing. Jin tells them to stay careful because the leopard still breathes. Jin admits the rest of the beast is waste, since the skin is too soft for armor. He opens his palm on a purple stone, the heart of the blood leopard, the highest grade down gem. Jin grumbles that he hunted for quick gems and walked off with one rock he cannot use yet. Rikshasha's yellow eyes stretch when Jin asks whether he passed the test. The elf drops flat and insists he would never test his lord. Jin tells him to quit sucking up and get back to their conversation. They stand alone on cracked floor while Rikshasha repeats the plan back. Revenge on the spirit king who trampled the mercenary corps, Jin's family. The elf keeps going. Jin split that king from the flood dragon king and lined the dragons up to devour the Naga labyrinth. Rikshasha asks if he understood right. Jin answers that details are missing, but the shape is correct. Jin cuts the rest short and wants to know when the Flood Dragon King lands here. The elf already scouted them. 5 days remain. Jin repeats it back. 5 days. Jin expected 2 weeks and doubts he can upgrade the labyrinth that fast. Rikshasha asks how he did not know. The elf brings up the parasite attached to him and Jin just says, "Oh, that." Jin tells him flatly that the parasite was a lie. Rikshasha's whole face collapses. Pardon? A dark cord hangs between them. The parasite dies once it leaves Jin's body, so the one crawling up that back went on right then. Rikshasha realizes the king moved on pure suspicion. Jin confirms the act worked out well. Jin asks why the face from a man who lied to kings of 2 labyrinths. Deception counts as a skill. The elf bows low and agrees it is exactly so. Jin lays out one last choice with a promise not to kill him on the spot. The options are the Flood Dragon Labyrinth with decades of history, or the newborn Naga Labyrinth. Joining him buys help with the revenge on the Spirit King. Refusing needs no explanation. Rikshasha asks for a little more time. At least, he wants to wait until the war ends, and Jin asks if he plans on joining whoever wins. A hand shoots out of the red dark and clamps around the elf's throat. Jin lifts him clean off the ground, calling him the first traitor to stay alive this long. 2 red eyes burn in the shadow while Jin sets the terms. Serve a king who is easy to manipulate, or a new king. Rikshasha claws at the fingers with tears on his cheek. Back in the Naga camp, small monsters crowd the floor while Quintus sprawls among them. Quintus turns toward the cave entrance as light spills across the wall. Jin walks in, Quintus shouts for his liege, and Rikshasha greets his master. The two step in side by side, and a voice throws in a jab about that damned elf. Rikshasha asks who she means. Dominique, the Naga mage, congratulates Jin on the leopard and the new hero. Jin asks if she introduced herself to Quintus. She says his look changed, but he is the same as before. Jin calls it his mistake, and Quintus erupts that his king never errs. Quintus roars that if the king wants introductions, introductions will happen. Greetings. He grabs Dominique and yells that meeting her is a pleasure and the weather outside is lovely. Jin admits his new general came out weird. Jin asks whether the message reached Dominique, and Quintus bellows that no word was dropped. Dominique thinks the leopard's vitality is worth trying, but their mage is injured. Jin will summon more mages. Jin wants them on it right away since time is short. Dominique asks what short means here. Her eyes blow open. The flood dragons arrive in 5 days. Jin tells everyone not to worry, because Rikshasha stands with them now, though nothing is certain yet. Rikshasha bows and answers as you wish, master. Jin has him repeat it all to Dominique, minus her personal feelings. Jin puts Quintus on watchtower and trap duty, plus 3 days to train every soldier. Quintus screams he will finish in 3 hours, and Jin tells him to cut the nonsense. Jin heads out for down gems from the labyrinth near ground level and weapons while he is there. Rikshasha listens as Jin promises a full plan in 3 days, built on the elf's information. Scouting duty until then. Jin waves without turning around and says the dragons are barely better than horned rats. Far away, a red eye opens inside heavy fog above a column of marching troops. Spears rise around the huge scaled head of the Flood Dragon King. A dark armored shape steps out and asks whether Anaxtus, their great king, called for them. Anaxtus names Azhag, his hero, then Urzhag beside him. Both go to the front lines. The Flood Dragon hero and champion stand lit in purple, and their king orders everything finished before he arrives. 5 days later, the invasion reaches the mouth of the Naga labyrinth. Inside, Dominique opens the final briefing while Jin listens from his seat and tells her to go ahead. The Naga side brings 90 soldiers and 10 warriors behind a fresh palisade, Quintus not counted. 2 gatekeepers anchor the rear, and a thin support group of archers and healers backs them. Dominique pulls up the map. The enemy marches with 121 bodies total. 2 mid-sized flood dragons match their gatekeepers, and a commander leads them as the enemy hero. Jin notes that the dragons carry no ranged units, exactly like Rikshasha reported. 2 shapes stand in a black tunnel while the briefing covers dragon mass and slow legs. Rikshasha figures they just tank whatever gets thrown at them, though they patched both flaws. Dominique breaks off and shouts for her master. Enemy front lines come into sight past the raised Naga spears. The dragon column walks out of the fog with weapons up. Jin checks a status window. 2 hours and 12 minutes remain before the labyrinth levels up, so the upgrade never landed. Dominique confirms the enemy route matches Rikshasha's report, which meets the first condition. Positions now. Dominique throws a hand up and sends the soldiers into the plan, while Draken, Jin's Draken warrior, waits beside the throne. Jin points out how badly the guy has been treated lately. Draken agrees loudly, since he is nobody's target practice. Jin tells him to walk out there and prove it, then asks the descendant of dragons for a demonstration. Draken steps onto open rock alone with the entire enemy line watching from the ridge. The flood dragons greet the descendant of the dragons. Rumor had him dead after his last defeat. Azhag, the flood dragon hero, asks straight out whether he bowed to the Nagas. Draken spits the name back. Draken calls him an old comrade. Azhag laughs that dealing with him was pure stress. Azhag says the Draken rumors were fake the whole time, a story built to hide weakness. Draken snarls that he is dirtying the dragon's name. Azhag calls him an outdated, endangered species. Flood dragons carry dragon blood too, Azhag argues, and probably more of it. He looks down the slope and tells the yellow lizard to know his place. Draken keeps climbing. Azhag asks if this is an attack or a surrender, then drops the question. Behind the palisade, the Naga ranks look thin, and Azhag calls their quality and their numbers pathetic. A Naga mage lights a spell in the dark, so the dragons decide extra caution costs nothing. A flood dragon officer bellows the order to attack. The whole column charges, screaming at each other to trample the Nagas flat. Azhag hands the mage infiltration to his champion and claims the yellow lizard for himself. A massive dragon moves out with a blade on his shoulder, while smaller shapes wait below him. Azhag launches through the rubble with his saw blade out and promises to make it painless. His jaws open wide over the wet edge of that blade, all for old time's sake. The blade opens Draken's chest and blood sprays across the stone. Azog cuts him a second time inside the same white flash. Draken stands black in the middle of the pack while every jaw around him roars. Azog screams into his face from point-blank range. Azog then notes that his opponent is bearing his back now and calls that an improvement. Dominique asks whether Draken survives this, since he looks the way he did against Jin. Jin says, "Leave him be." Jin explains that the guy fears death badly, which made him sharp at measuring an enemy. Draken is not simply eating hits. Every strike he takes is a reading of his opponent's power. Jin adds that bearing his back was a test to see whether Azog knows his weak point. Draken gets stronger against stronger foes. Dominique admits she never knew Draken was that strong. Jin saw the numbers when the lizards submitted to him. Azog calls the bluff good and admits the guy is more than a lizard. He is still a hero. Red light floods the ground while Azog opens up his full power. He lifts both claws over his head and tells Draken to die. The rubble blows apart and Draken stands untouched, ranked hero double plus. Jin calls him the second strongest here, right after himself. Azog stares and cannot finish the word how. Draken clamps both hands on the dragon skull and asks about that dragon blood claim. He drags the head down and brings up the basic qualities of a real dragon. Fire builds in Draken's throat, and he invites Azog to copy it. Azog begs him to stop with his teeth clenched in the glare. The flame goes off and swallows the whole frame. Azog burns inside it while his armor runs off his shoulders. His face slides down his own jaw and he screams about losing it. What is left of the head sags into a shapeless lump. Draken stands in the smoke, puzzled. He thought descendants of dragons were supposed to be immune to fire. Draken finishes that thought, while Azog pushes out one last sound. Flame and claw blur together as the yellow warrior drives in the final strike. Draken flexes both arms over the body while the flood dragons freeze around him. A flood dragon soldier screams that their hero and their commander went down. The line panics and yells that the Nagas have a real dragon on their side. Front ranks turn and run, still calling for their command. The dragon champion holds the formation together and pushes the mage infiltration anyway. A huge dragon roars over the fleeing bodies near the labyrinth arch. The flood dragons surge forward instead of breaking, which puts the Naga mages next in line. A flood dragon soldier screams through the air as the catapults hurl him at the Naga wall. Dominique, Jin's Naga aide, asks whether the archers should shoot the flying bodies down. Jin refuses to spend arrows on common troops and puts two mages on defense instead. Naga spearmen brace as another one crunches into the cliff beside them. Ice spikes burst up and catch the next batch in mid-fall. One of them lands on the frozen blades and coughs up blood. More ice teeth tear through the bodies still dropping. A survivor sprawls in the smoke and mumbles that he made it. A giant flood dragon leans over him with two white glowing eyes. The big one grabs his arm while the little guy begs for a second. The giant ignores that and slings him straight at the Naga wall. The rest of the catapult crew laughs and loads up their own soldiers. A huge claw slams onto the ledge just below Jin's seat. Jin has the gatekeepers throw the bodies back at the mid-sized ones to pull them into the formation. Dominique reports Draken holding the middle with no damage coming through. Their map shows the enemy center spreading sideways after their commander went down. Jin turns down the traps because he wants their big ones out in the open first. Quintus roars a yes when Jin gives him the right flank and Draken the left. Both officers take the order and promise nobody pushes them back a step. Jin then calls Rikshasha, the flood dragon defector crouched behind the seat. Rikshasha wipes off the sweat and starts on the enemy main force. The flood dragon king is on the way, and Dominique's face drops at the news. A crowned gray giant tramps in with the tunnel booming under his weight. Naga soldiers at the front stare up with their mouths hanging open. One of them climbs the ridge and sees the field the enemy has filled. Jin starts the sentence and Rikshasha finishes it with a flat yes. The shadow belongs to Anaxtus, the king of the flood dragon labyrinth. Rikshasha counts 300 in the main force, half of them plain soldiers. Over 30 catapult types ride along, and the high ranks alone outnumber Jin's whole army. Dominique turns to Jin with the king's title half out of her mouth. Anaxtis walks into the light and shows the muscle under those horns. His finger comes down toward one of his own soldiers standing below. The king's fist closes around a chunk of the broken floor. Behind him, the hall is packed with bodies all the way to the arch. A screaming soldier vanishes inside that fist. This is his own army. The horde roars and charges at the Naga line. Bodies fly again as the catapults pitch them over the front ranks. Dominique yells that the main force is attacking, and Jin puts everyone on the flyers. Jin holds the archers back because he wants more of them inside the kill zone. He stands with his arms crossed while the rocks around him shake. Rakshasa warns that the mages are burning out, holding the ground up. Jin gives it one more breath and then tells them to send the enemy to the abyss. Dominique screams at the mages to drop the casting right now. The masked Naga mages let the spell die and turn toward the fight. The charging flood dragons pour across the flat ground. One at the back yells at the slow ones to hurry before they get stepped on. The front rank looks down and finds ice where the dirt used to be. The floor opens and the whole charge drops onto blue spikes. Hundreds of them scream on the way into the pit. This was only their first line. The ranks behind skid to a stop at the edge of the new cliff. Quintus swings his arm and orders the Naga line to push them in. Rakshasa stares at the chasm the mages had disguised as a dirt floor. Jin says better scouting would have caught it. Only Rakshasa and Draken came over from that side. Rakshasa admits he assumed the alliance made any scouting pointless. Dominique's report puts the losses at 20 Naga soldiers and 1 warrior. The map counts the whole front line plus a fifth of the main force gone, leaving about 250. Jin picks the phalanx because the castle sits on one narrow bridge. Quintus and Draken take the front while the rest spread out under the catapult fire. Dominique passes the order to kill each launch dragon the second it lands, aiming under the chin. Rakshasa asks where a human picked up this kind of war planning. Jin blinks at him and takes his time with the answer. The tactics came from games humans play and old game armies flash behind him. Rakshasa's jaw drops at the idea of war being a hobby. Jin only needs the king to step in, and the second defense line stays unused. Rakshasa says one detail has been bugging him since the count started. He has not seen a single siege type or champion in that whole army. The arch at the far end blows apart in smoke and falling stone. Dominique spins around and shouts for her master. A champion strolls out of the rubble with a red blade while the call goes up that the right wall is breached. A red claw as wide as a house drags itself out of the broken wall. Jin yells about the ridiculous thing, and Rakshasa, his underelf scout, names it a siege-class flood dragon. Jin sizes it against an adult hell spider and knows it would gut the whole formation. Dust boils off the breach while more flood dragons pour through the hole. Champions with red eyes walk out of it, and hero-class ones are mixed in. The elites cut straight for the core of the Naga defense line. The siege monster leans over the ridge where Jin is standing. Jin opens the battle map and pulls the Naga troops back to the second line. Dominique panics because Quintus, the Naga who just made hero, cannot beat a hero-class champion. She wants Draken pulled back, but his fire breath is the only thing holding the front, so Jin says no. Rakshasa asks not to be told to sit and watch again. Jin warns him the battle is too big, and the scout answers that he is confident he will live. Jin waves him off to fight the hero-level champion beside Quintus. Then Jin has the mages let the blood leopard loose on the bridge. Pink eyes glow inside a dark muzzle behind a wall of ice. The crystal shell splits open while flood dragon soldiers gather under it. Red flesh swells out through the cracking blue crystal. The shell bursts and blows the nearest soldiers off the rocks. One stone soldier turns toward the noise far too late. Red eyes open in the smoke over a mouth packed with teeth. The blood leopard rears up and screams down the bridge. Dominique asks what happens if it comes their way, and Jin tells her it already fought him once. The leopard drags a clawed arm forward with its eyes burning red. Its jaws part wide enough to show every tooth in there. It rips into the flood dragon column packed under the gate arch. Ice spikes box the rest of them in, which buys the Nagas a little time. The siege dragon comes out of the dust aimed at Jin, not at the Nagas. Jin tells Dominique to step back and reaches for a handle sticking out of the rock wall. The stone splits open around the head of a huge mace. He hauls the whole thing free while Dominique gapes at it. Jin settles his grip because a mace is perfect against sturdy opponents. Dominique begs him to save his energy for the Flood Dragon King, and he promises to try his best. The dragon opens its mouth as it covers the last stretch. The mace catches it across the skull, and the rock face caves in. Dust rolls off the plated body while the smaller shapes scatter around it. Jin resets his stance and starts telling it he is right here. His face goes flat because the thing never even slowed down for him. It sweeps past him toward the gate, and he screams at Dominique to run. Dominique freezes in the archway with the whole bulk coming at her. The armored body grinds straight through the entrance. Jin turns and shouts her name into the rolling smoke. She calls back that she is fine and that the dragon is wedged in the Naga gate. Jin finally gets it since the target was never him. It wants the labyrinth core. Draken blinks mid-fight when the order to fall back reaches him. He touches down asking his king what is wrong, and Jin grabs him for moving so slow. Jin throws him at the dragon and tells him to keep it off the core. Down on the bridge, the blood leopard is doing far better than anyone hoped. It has stopped the enemy main force cold and pushed them into a retreat. Jin expected 2 quick meals and a stealth exit, and now the leopard is heading for the king. A hulking champion roars that the Nagas have tamed the blood leopard. The leopard crashes into him before he finishes the sentence. Its red eye narrows in the middle of all that noise. It swings an arm through the champions crowding in around it. The jaws drop on one of them from above. The teeth close, and the body is simply gone. Claws rake up through what is left of the group. A calm voice behind it says the claws reached all the way to him. The Flood Dragon King lights up gold and calls the whole thing disgusting. A golden blade comes down through the leopard. The cut rips across the field and throws bodies into the air. Dominique reports that half the left flank is already gone. The Flood Dragon King is walking into the battle himself, and Jin still has a mace and no plan.